Good evening, everyone. I call the meeting to order. This meeting of the Hopkins Select Board is being held both in person and remotely using the video conference platform Zoom. Select Board member Brian Herr will be participating remotely, and all other members of the Select Board will be present for this meeting at Town Hall, room 215, 216 in person. At this time, I will ensure that that Select Board member participating remotely can be heard. Brian, can you hear us? Brian, you out there? Might have to come back to that. The public has the option of attending in person here at Town Hall or via Zoom.
Chair,
using the
can you
link.
hear me?
Now we can.
We can, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
I can't hear you. Hang on one sec, please.
Be here at Town Hall or via Zoom using the link posted in this meeting's agenda. This meeting is being recorded. All votes will be taken by a roll call vote. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me now?
Yes, we've been able to hear you, Brian.
Okay, yeah, I couldn't hear you folks. I'll be driving, so I won't be able to see any agenda or packet info or anything as I'm driving.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we will move to public forum. Each person will have up to 2 minutes to speak at public forum. Please start by stating your name and your address. And so right before we do, I want to say a few things. One, first of all, we had a typo. Tonight, it only had public forum going till 6:10. It is the 15 minutes that we've been doing. So that was just an oversight. But I wanted to just kind of, remind everyone when we started doing the 15 minutes, there's a lot that we need to cover in these meetings, especially this time of year as we're only weeks away from town meeting. And that allows us to, move through the agenda as we've done multiple times. If people did not get a chance to speak during that 15 minutes, we will come back to it at the end of the meeting's agenda items. And really just in general, I want to remind people, we hear what people are saying at public forum. I understand that there can be a lot of frustration around certain things, especially around the timing of things and, how quickly or not we can actually make changes in this town. But we do hear you. And if public forum doesn't seem to be getting it done for you, we all welcome email as an option as well to follow up with us directly as a board. And then, really, the last thing I'll say on it is, most of all, the only thing I look for is for everyone to be respectful of one another. We are neighbors. I don't expect everyone to get along or be friends or share the same opinions, but we do need to treat each other with respect when we're in this meeting. So with that, I will say that, is there anyone in the room who would like to come up and speak this evening? Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. Kevin Narbone, 14 Hillcrest Drive in Hopkinton. Just wanted to speak how deeply disgusted I was with the victims not giving their time by Shadul in the last, on April 7th. You guys are public servants. I understand there are situations that play out, but for a victim to come in here and speak is really important for them to go through that process. It's important for us as a community to go through that process with them. But on April 7th, the board held that public forum. When the chair announced it was over, several people in the room, Joe, you're probably mentioning this, just preluding coming in, politely asked for a vote to extend time, and they didn't. Isabel Boy was the one who asked. No vote was taken. The board moved to consent agenda. Shadul voted it down. Lynn Keefe stood up. She was a woman who contacted the Hopkinton Police Department in April 2022 to report a man had raped her as a child was volunteering at a church in Hopkinton. She waited 4 months for a response. Lynn tried to speak, was not allowed. Within 1 minute, Brian, the other chair, had reached over and looked at Lance to call the police. This only adds fuel to a victim's fire. The wrong response. 3 officers were dispatched within 5 minutes. The woman who waited 4 months for the HP to respond saw a response by the police department much quicker. And you did this in front of some victims. This was outrageous and wrong. I was watching the meeting from my kitchen. Later that same evening, Lynn was allowed to speak. She apologized profusely. Again, you mentioned, Joe, that we're all in the community together. Let's work together as a community to get stronger. This board should reflect on the disrespect on April 7th. And I, as a community member, taxpayer in town, are just so disheartened by those victims that weren't allowed to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to come speak? Welcome.
Welcome. Ian Click, 143 Clinton Street. And thank you for having this time allotted as a public forum. I am holding a copy of the town flag. I am also holding a list of all of the Hopkinton residents that were in many of the wars of the revolutionary time of our country. We don't have time to discuss either of these, but I'm here tonight because I'd like you to consider a point that I'd like to make about the parade request that you have on your agenda for later in the meeting for the July 4th town parade. I'm suggesting that the revolutionary veterans would have appreciated, and those who have come since then will appreciate, you considering a theme of happy and patriotic response during that parade. I, as a citizen of Hopkinton, wish that the board, and also I promote, a theme to be said, Hopkinton celebrates America's birthday, as this July 4th is being recognized as the 250th anniversary of America. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to come up and speak? Welcome.
John Skowski, 15 Long Drive, Ashland. So we've been here now almost over 250 days, and everything we present here and we've come here and presented is nothing more than your record. The select boards, the town manager's record, the HPDs, town councils. It's not any of our words. It's your words, it's your documents. That's all we've ever brought into this room. But for this institution, it's like I've said before, the truth apparently is offensive, and we don't understand why. We get statements back that are like half-truths. We get told it's a conspiracy. Policies created to try to limit, what's being released. We gave demand letters in person to you. They never got publicized in your agenda packet. Yet you published a letter about weed control. We want to know why. When public record requests go in, the town blocks and delays. And instead of wanting us, it's just to seek the truth. Your actions are always to limit, to expose to the community. And several of you ran on a campaign of transparency. And when we come to these meetings, your record gets exposed, and the only response is to ignore, misinform, and make noise. But there's some on this board, they object, they abstain, they want to learn more, and every time they do, other members squash them, right on TV, right on the camera, right on HCAM, being told in plain sight of everyone. And I quote this, "You don't understand how things are done here." In other words, they acted appropriately, apparently. It's all on the record, it's all in your own voices, it's all in your own documents. I encourage the community to go look at that record for themselves. It's available to you for free. All you have to do is go ask, and you can pull these records up. Go request them yourselves. If you want to see it summarized, we have a Facebook page. You can go to Demand the Truth Hopkinton. It's there. You can go read it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to come speak? Do you want to check to see if we have anyone on Zoom?
There are people on Zoom, but no hands are raised.
For anyone out there on Zoom, if you'd like to speak, raise your hand or please chime in. With that, we will move on. Tonight, we're moving on to the consent agenda. Select Board will consider the following consent agenda minutes. The Board will consider approving the minutes of March 31st, 2026 meeting. The Board will consider approving the following parade permit applications. The Board will consider reviewing and approving a parade permit application for the Independence Day Parade on July 4th, 2026, with a rain date of July 5th, 2026, submitted by Mike Whalen for the Veterans Celebration Committee. The parade would start at 11 a.m. and begin and end at the Town Common. Road closures are requested. The Board will consider reviewing and approving a parade permit application for the Pride Parade being organized by the Hopkins Center for the Arts to be held on June 20th, 2026 from 1 to 4 p.m. The event will start and end at Marathon Way, and there are no road closures requested. The Board will consider reviewing and approving a parade permit application for the Jimmy Fund Walk scheduled to be held on October 4th, 2026. There are no road closures requested. The walk will take place along the Boston Marathon course, starting at the Marathon start line and ending at Ashland Town Line. The Board will also consider accepting the following gifts. One, $250 donation from the Hopkins Garden Club to the Hopkins Public Library for the seed library expenses. A $390 donation on behalf of Marie Lucking to the Hopkins Public Library for the purchase of books. $25 donation to the ambulance fund from Mavis O'Leary, and $50 from Susan and Kevin Muse in memory of Artie Pine. The Board will consider confirming the town manager's appointment of David Nordstrom as a part-time dishwasher at the senior center. And lastly, the Board will consider accepting the resignation of Ron Foisey from the Zoning Advisory Committee. With that, I will look to the Board. Do we want to break anything out?
I guess I was going to say, it seems like the people from the 4th of July parade are here. I don't know if we need to speak to them.
I'd like to welcome them up if they came. I mean, we've got 3 parade permits, and we always like to kind of give an opportunity for someone to come up and speak. So we'll go right down the list. Would someone from the Independence Day parade like to come up and just say hello and talk about the parade permit? Welcome, Mike.
All right, I'm Mike Whalen, 262 Wood Street. You have my application that I submitted on behalf of the Veterans Celebration Committee, which you have authorized them to sponsor this revitalized parade here in town. There are several members of the community who have already stepped forward and are interested in being on a committee, to make this parade work. And I'm sure it's probably going to be done well. And the only thing different from it really, aside from it being a 4th of July 250th celebration, different than the Horribles parade, we want to be more positive and more celebratory and not so much negative political floats, that kind of a thing. I've already talked with the park department and have reserved the gazebo for that day in the town common. We'll, of course, work with the police on that day if you approve this to make everything work. It's going to be the same route as the Horribles parade over the years. And I look forward to every organization in town, club, sport, team, business, even the Board of Selectmen might want to enter a vote. So,
Does this parade have water balloons or not this year?
it might be the highlight of the parade.
If we allowed water balloons, it would certainly draw a crowd.
Right. So the 2 main reasons why we're here is because of Amy and Jim. They're heads of their political parties, and they really are ones who are the spearhead of this whole venture. And they basically will be the ones, along with other volunteers, running the parade.
Perfect.
Okay.
Well, appreciate you coming up and saying a few words. Board, do we have any questions for Mike?
Thank you for organizing it and getting all the paperwork in order, and we appreciate you dressing up for the evening.
Good. Good.
So first, kudos to the two town parties for getting together and finding a collaborative solution. This didn't go the way that we wanted last year. I love hearing that the two sides have come together and we have found something that we can unite on. I thought it was interesting when the miss was speaking earlier, and it really got to me about the slogan is sitting up in town right now. It's the start of something great, and you're talking about revolutionary history in the country and it being the start of something great. I really see how the motif fits with our community, and I really am impressed and a little bit humbled by what you have done to turn something that was causing community division into community alignment and collaboration. Truly, we really appreciate this one. Thank you.
Good. Okay.
Brian, thoughts or
I'm all
questions?
set. Thank you. Nice to see you, Mike.
Yep.
I'm good as well. Thank
All
you.
good?
Appreciate you coming up.
Yeah, so just since I'm here in front of this large TV audience, I would like to spread the word. Anybody in town who wants to participate or has any questions, you can get a hold of me or Vasuda. I'm sure we'll be glad to supply anybody's email if they want to be part of this or just has a question.
Love that.
All right?
Awesome. Thank you. Do we have anyone here on behalf of the Pride Parade? Welcome, Kelly.
Hello. So Kelly Girl from the Hopkinton Center for the Arts. We are partnering once again with the Freedom Team to host the Pride Parade, and we have requested to move it this year to the Common. We will be having the same activities that we've had in the past, some vendors, some food trucks, some bouncy house, some wonderful, colorful activities to happen. And so we'll be parading around the Common. We don't need to shut down the roads because we can do the sidewalks there, and really hoping for a big brass band. We're working on it, but we're trying to figure out activities to make it a fun day.
Perfect. Questions for Kelly?
I know, but I'm interested to see how it works on the new location. I think it'll be good.
Great.
I will be there with rainbows. I'm very excited.
Excellent.
Brian?
I'm all set. Thanks.
No questions. I think this is exciting. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
And then lastly, the Jimmy Fund Walk. Is anyone here to speak on behalf of that? Anyone on Zoom as well?
There are people on Zoom, but I don't know if they're from the Jimmy Walk.
Okay. I mean, with that, I think, looking through some of these things, Elaine, I think we had all the necessary paperwork in place for the applications when they came through. Was everything complete? Are we missing anything?
No, everything is complete.
Perfect. All right, so with that, I will look for a motion here for the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any final thoughts? This will be roll call.
Amy Rodovish, yes.
Matt Kisner, yes.
Brian?
Brian Herr, yes?
And Joe Clark, yes. Next, moving on. Select Board will consider permitting a bonfire on Field 1 and 2 of the middle school for an event to be held on June 12, 2026, from 7 to 9:30 p.m. to commemorate the start of the senior year for the class of 2027. Massachusetts General Law regarding ceremonial bonfire states, Chapter 111, Section 142H allows the Select Board to authorize the fire department to issue not more than one permit per year for a ceremonial bonfire. The bonfire must mark the observance of a significant municipal, state, or national event and must be under continuous fire department supervision. The permit can only be issued to a municipal department, civic, fraternal, or veterans organization within the city or town. Only untreated wood may be burned, and the bonfire cannot exceed 12 hours in duration. So I see we've already been joined. Welcome. Welcome, Karen and Gail.
Sure. I'm Karen Crum, 12 Joseph Road. Just a minute. It's through the chair. So I'm representing the two designated class parents for the class of 2027, and I'm part of a group of parents assisting with all events for the current junior class through their graduation. So tonight, I'm asking for your approval for a bonfire permit. Gail Ober has joined me as she spearheaded last year's first annual bonfire for the class of 2026, which I volunteered at. This bonfire is scheduled to take place on Friday, June 12th for 2.5 hours, fields 1 and 2 at the middle school. The significance of the event for this class is it commemorates the start of their senior year, as the seniors will be like out of there already, so they'll officially be calling themselves seniors. Attached to the agenda, you should see support from Fire Chief Gary Doherty and Tim Persons, Director of Facilities for Hopkinton Public Schools. The two things I'll note, though, is there's no rain date for the event, so if it does rain, this will be inside the high school gym and cafeteria. And it is designated on the forms, but if there's a critical drought, we will not have a bonfire, but we'll still have food and games. Chief Doherty will let us know if there's a critical drought, which will be determined by state guidelines.
Perfect. Do you have any thoughts, or?
No, it was just very successful last year, being our first year. It was awesome. It was a great night for the students. It really bonded them, brought them together. Mr. Bishop was there. All of the assistant principals were there. And it was supported by Gary and by Tim, and it was just an amazing event. So I support that we keep it going as sort of a yearly thing.
Yeah, I remember hearing how successful it was last year, so was excited to see it back on the agenda and stuff. So I'll look to the board. Questions, comments? Amy?
No, I appreciate that the fire chief will keep an eye on the risk of brush fire, but otherwise it looks like it's in order.
All right, so I was crotchety about the car parade. This, on the other hand, feels like a really creative use of school grounds and resources. I rather love the notion of the catharsis of burning and starting anew. It feels very pagan to me, which I'm always going to be in support of. I don't know if the fire chief is on the line. The one just generic admin question I had, because this had the language about it being once a year for the ceremonial permit, I just generically wanted to understand, like, how often is this requested? This feels like a wonderful reason to do it, but I don't want to make the decision with blinders. Is this a request that we routinely get? We obviously gave it to them last year. I don't think I do either, but I at least want to hear from Elaine or from Gary.
And I don't think, Gary wasn't able to make it tonight.
It's okay.
So I don't think he's on the phone or on Zoom.
I've got his notes here. I don't have any concerns from a fire perspective. I really just want to understand logistically if this is a requested service. If it is, I would want to better understand. If it's not, that's okay.
We've not had any other requests in the last few years.
Perfect. I don't have any other comments. Thank you for being creative and finding a way to do something for the kids to make it special.
Good. Brian, any thoughts?
It sounds like we're following state law, as we should, and it sounds like the fire department will be there and maintain a safe place for everyone. I'm all set. Thanks.
Yeah, I know we talked before. We have all the permit requirements are in place. The fire chief, he couldn't make it tonight, as you alluded to, but he said he was very supportive. So yeah, I'm excited for this. So thank you both for coming up.
You're welcome to come. We'll send an official invite, but yeah.
Yes.
With that, I will look for a motion from the board.
I move to authorize the fire department to issue a permit for a ceremonial bonfire for the class of 2027 on 12 June 2026.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further thoughts?
I'd prefer no effigies, especially if we're going to come, but I'm not going to be a stickler about it. Please don't burn any pictures or icons of us if you can get away with it.
Not allowed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Roll call. Amy?
Amy Roderbush, yes?
Matt Kisner, yes.
Brian?
Brian, hurry, yes.
And Joe Clark, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to it. Next, the board will hear an update and consider adopting the draft zero emissions vehicle first policy. So our friends from the Sustainable Green Committee here. And Julia, of course. Welcome, everyone. It's good to have you all back.
Thank you. Good to see you. This is mostly Julia's show, actually.
Yeah, but everyone's up here for questions, so if any come up, feel free to ask. Yes. So I'm just waiting for, okay, perfect. So today we've brought back the ZEV policy, so thank you for making the time for this. Next slide, please. So the walkthrough of today will just be going through a climate update, so giving you an update on climate leaders or progress in that, an overview and background of EVs again, and then diving back into the ZEV policy and a couple changes that have been made there.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, if I could just jump in for a sec. I need to recuse myself. I'll mute my phone. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brian. Noted.
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, perfect. So this is currently the checklist we have for Climate Leaders, which is a state program. Currently, Hopkinton is a green community. Climate Leaders is a separate program that we would be applying for. So any of the bullets that have checks on them are bullets that we have completed, including the Specialized Energy Code. Thanks to these two and the rest of the Sustainable Green Committee, we were able to pass that at the 2024 town meeting. We passed the Net Zero resolution at the 2023 town meeting. We have our local body, and we're a green community in good standing. The objectives that are left are to adopt this zero emission vehicle first policy. We've spoken to the police, fire, DPW, and facilities, and they're all in support of this. And we also have to create a municipal decarbonization roadmap, and we have applied for state technical assistance to do that. Next slide, please. So going into a little bit of why it's important for us to level up from green communities to climate leaders, there is so much money right now that's available at the state level, including a $1.15 million grant for renewable applications and programming. This would fund things such as heat pumps, solar, battery storage, and other clean technologies that we are planning to implement both at the existing high school and middle school, but also other buildings such as the Senior Center and our town hall and the upcoming center schools. So we have several projects in the pipeline that we will want to have long-term cost savings for both the town and taxpayers. Next slide, please. Next slide. So going a little bit into the benefits of EVs. This is a chart showing the fuel comparison between the 4 types of vehicles identified in the zero emissions vehicle policy. So as you can see, battery electric vehicles save so much money when it comes to annual fuel cost. They also avoid 13,000 metric tons of CO2 per year and would save the town $175,000 a year in operating costs. Next slide, please. This is also a slide showing the overall maintenance and fuel savings of EVs versus gas vehicles. So NRDC shows that the maintenance costs are around 40 to 70% less costly, and in a state where currently fuel costs are, I'm sure you know if you drive, extremely expensive, electricity is a little bit less volatile, more consistent, and with the implementation of solar, we would be able to drive down costs even further for our operating budget. We were able to do a power options fleet analysis a couple years ago, and that showed that, as I stated earlier, we'd be saving around $175,000 a year with $4.5 million in savings by 2050. Below is just an example of what a replacement would look like. So currently we have a Ford Explorer for our police fleet. If we were to switch that over to the Chevy Blazer LT, we'd have fuel savings of $1,596, and then annual maintenance savings, because you're not doing things like expensive engine operations, for $946. Next slide, please. So this is a chart showing what would happen if we were to switch things over and switch our vehicles over consistently from now to 2050. And so I know that the chart is a little bit difficult to see, but some of the key points are that if we were to switch over to BEVs, our annual average savings would be $500,000 by 2050. And the upfront investment required to transition Hopkinton's entire fleet is $12 million. That includes $7.5 million for the vehicles, and then additional costs for infrastructure, but due to the lower costs of maintenance, the town can expect to see cumulative savings of $4.5 million by 2050. Next slide, please. So this is just a slide. Nicole here has collected some really amazing data on increased EV adoption across town. So this is demonstrating that residents support this across town. We see that 963 residents in town drive EVs, 307 drive plug-in hybrids, and 1,061 drive hybrids.
And growing every year.
Yes. Next slide, please. So speaking a little bit to charging infrastructure, because that, of course, is an important step for us to be able to transition our fleet. We currently have charging applications in for the Mass EVIT program, which I'll speak to a little bit later, at the police station, at DPW, 2535 Main Street, and the high school. Rebates exist at the state level, so government-owned locations are covered up to 100% in terms of hardware and installation, up to $50,000 per street address. Any other location, the agency funds up to 80%. So we are aided by state funding there. We also have a revolving fund that is in the works of being set up. So any revenue made from public chargers would be reinvested into adding additional chargers. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's get into the actual policy itself. So there is a prioritization schedule. So the first priority is electric vehicles, the second plug-in hybrids, then whatever the most fuel efficient option is. So I want to make it clear that this policy does not rule out gas vehicles. We want to ensure that we are addressing department budgets, their needs, and the charging infrastructure that's in place. There's also a list of exemptions for vehicles. So this is the portion of the policy that we have edited. Any ambulances, fire trucks, public work vehicles, and any vehicles with emergency response capabilities, as well as vehicles that are over 8,500 pounds will be exempt from the policy. I also want to note that we currently do have a sustainable vehicle policy where if a department is no longer using a vehicle, they can pass that down to another department. We can still do that with this policy. We just want to make sure that the vehicle that's being replaced is more sustainable and fuel efficient than the vehicle being replaced. Next slide. So this, I already spoke a little bit to, but ZEV does not mean we only have to purchase EVs. We want to make sure that it is a vehicle that the department can use and fits their needs at the time. Next slide. Speaking a little bit to state policies, so California has adopted a rule that they will no longer be selling gas vehicles. Massachusetts has decided to follow California's lead by facilitating the end of non-zero emission vehicles by 2035. So currently, that's not the policy, but it's important for us to get ahead of that and start transitioning our vehicles so that we're not caught in a place where A, we don't have the infrastructure, and B, do not have the experience with these vehicles. So this is something that's coming down the pipeline from the state level. Next slide. So how do we move forward? I think the first step is adopting this policy and working collaboratively with departments to understand their budgets, the functions of the vehicles that currently exist on the market, and understanding what charging needs there are for each department. The plan is to prioritize administrative vehicles and facilities vehicles, and in doing so, securing climate leaders funding to be able to implement more of the infrastructure needed to advance this policy. Next slide, please. I think that was just a thank you slide. So thank you all for listening to the presentation and for being supportive of the town's climate initiatives.
Perfect. Thank you. I'll just kind of go right to the board for thoughts, questions. Amy, do you want to start?
Yeah, I appreciate the presentation. We've had it before, and it sounds like it's more in order. All the departments have been talking about it and understand which vehicles will be exempt and which which ones will be prioritized. So it sounds like everything is in order now, and I'm happy to support this policy. I have a question. You mentioned it might cost $12 million to get this all implemented, but that's not the first year, right?
No, that's the lifetime, yes.
Just want to check.
Keeping in mind that most of those costs would be incurred anyways as you replace those vehicles over time.
Yep.
Savvy. I'm focused on the numbers here as well. So I'm torn. This feels like really good policy to me, and it is very clearly reflective of the will of the community and the direction the town has consistently gone. Perhaps I have an outdated memory here, but in my time on Capitol, there was a consistent conversation with police in particular about the inadequacy of EVs. They were being noted as requiring increased maintenance, and while there was not an increased cost, there was an increased downtime, and that there was a lower life cycle on the vehicles requiring more frequent replacement. It's not clear to me the analysis you've presented is reflective of the reality that these vehicles right now need to be replaced more often and they cost more to buy up front. At least this is the feedback that was given to me by our chief of police. So I can't speak for the other departments, but at least generically for police, I'd like to reframe that concern and understand from your perspective if information has changed.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. So the current vehicles that are at concern are hybrid vehicles. And so we've spoken to the chief about it, and he understands that the vehicles that we are proposing are EVs. They don't have the same engine problems that hybrids do. And so these EVs would have a longer life cycle, and so would not need to be replaced as frequently, and also would not have the same maintenance issues as seen in one of these charts.
Yep, I saw the 40 to 70% decreased life cycle here. I'm continuing to hear you, but it sounds to me like there is more here going on. We're still opting into what, from my perspective, is an evolving technology. And while I can appreciate that there is a lot of state prioritization, and this reflects green here, I'm really concerned about putting a policy in place that kind of puts a thumb on the scale. You mentioned the vehicle replacement program. That was kind of a laughingstock of a conversation about 2-3 meetings ago, where I learned all about the great chain of awful that ends with somebody getting a car that they absolutely don't want to drive that was bad 4 owners ago. We have problems in town. I can see where this aligns with our interests. I don't know that I'm entirely comfortable voting on this because it's not entirely clear to me that all of the cost to ownership is projectable or forecastable. I'm also not entirely aligned with your proposal on using funds from the chargers explicitly for the sustainability of the chargers. Not everybody in town is going to want to support these, but their taxpayer money is starting to go towards them. I would much prefer to see that going back into the general fund. If you need more money for chargers, you're welcome to make the case, but what enriches the community should enrich the community. I continue to be really concerned about how sub-splicey we are getting with the notion of these supplemental funds. So I'm happy to hear more, but I'll be honest, I'm not comfortable supporting this one tonight.
I just want to respond and say that they wouldn't be supplemental funds because they would be paying for the charging of the vehicles, which we already pay for the gas fueling of vehicles. And so
we're not going to get into a back and forth here. My statement was purely about the cost of continuing to reinvest for new chargers. That money could be further allocated elsewhere. You were proposing putting it in a box. I don't like boxes. Thank you.
Joe.
Can I ask like a little bit different question? Because I think the problem that I had when we previously discussed this was really like, and it's great, like, you know, the big fire trucks, DPW trucks, those are all like obvious things that aren't a good fit for EVs. But, you know, you talked about the challenges with hybrid and challenges with maintaining them, costs associated with that. And so the recommendation I thought was full EV, correct?
Sorry, what was that?
The recommendation for like is full
Yes,
EV.
that's the prioritization. So we would start with full EVs and then plug-in hybrids, and then gas vehicles.
Okay. And so the one thing that I thought there might have been like an exception made at some point, but I'm thinking strictly of like cop cars, which basically are on 24/7. And I felt like the EVs were not a good fit for that. Has that changed? Is there an exception there? I thought there might be,
There are exemptions built in for any vehicle with emergency response capabilities. That being said, the hope is that they follow the spirit of the policy, but there's also the criteria that goes into place when you're selecting the vehicle. One of which, is the price upfront. Departments have budgets. There's the charging capacity that we have. Either of those could exempt them from getting an EV and switching down to a hybrid, for example. What slide was that we had
The exemptions?
no, the one after it. Oh, no, you added a couple since then. Yeah, that one.
See.
So yeah, there's the department needs, there's the functions of the vehicle, there's looking at the vehicles on the market and whether those match what the department needs. It's looking at the adequate charging
I'm sorry,
infrastructure.
could we get that slide back on the screen, because we can't see it?
Oh, yeah, sure. It is the last slide.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Ben.
So in essence, what I'm trying to say is this doesn't force the department to get an EV. It requires them to think about it, but it doesn't force them to do it. If it doesn't meet their needs, they go down the list to the next most efficient vehicle, which in the end might still be a gas car for the foreseeable future.
Okay, all right, that's a big difference, because I felt like we were here, multiple months ago, and that at the time it seemed that it was a requirement, and, I had a problem with that one specifically.
Yeah, I think that was a misunderstanding at the time, but since then, there have been multiple discussions with the police on those points.
Yeah.
There have been, I know there's 35 towns or municipalities in Massachusetts that are now climate leaders. So by definition, there's at least 35 towns. I know there's a few more that have passed this policy. And we modeled our policy very similar to what other towns have adopted, where this exemption language is either the same or taking pieces from what different towns have. So it's aligned with what's acceptable to become a climate leader. And we wouldn't be the first town doing this.
Yeah.
This has become a growing trend in many of our peer towns.
Yep, no, and thank you for the clarification. Just, I want to make sure, I'm fully understanding it. And then I know we talked about, I think you said the investment was around 12 million to turn over the entire fleet. 7.5, you said, was the vehicles themselves, which, to your point, we would incur that cost over time. So there's what are we looking at, $4.5 million? And that's, you said infrastructure, is that charging stations?
That's the cost of electricity as well, the charging, yes.
It's the cost of the electricity as well.
That takes into cost everything from fuel, infrastructure, and then the vehicles.
So it's comparing what, would have been gas usage with, now electric usage.
Okay, yeah, that's very helpful. And just in, I think I only saw one number up there from the grants, because I think it's what you guys are doing is the best thing for the town. You're looking at how can we get additional funding from the state, government to, pay off for whatever we can. And I think I saw something like 1.15 million. Is that, could that go towards the infrastructure for the chargers? Or was that for, I know that was around solar and heat pumps. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
So I believe there have been towns that have used it for charging infrastructure. Usually the charging just doesn't cost that much. And so we would want to apply for those grants for larger projects such as the schools.
We know that the schools plan to bring forward next year and the following year new HVAC systems for the high school and the middle school, and their leading option, because it's cost effective, is ground source heat pumps. Well, that is one of the perfect kinds of projects to apply for this type of grant. So we know that's coming. That project is coming either way. If we have access to this kind of grant funding, because we're a climate leader, of course we'd have to apply for it and be selected, but it gives us that opportunity to access that we don't have today.
Okay. And so then, Elaine, I'll kind of look to you. So, right now I'm kind of focused on the 4.5 for chargers and the infrastructure. That's something that would theoretically have to go to town meeting. What's the plan right now for making that investment?
I think they're invested in this program from the state, which will give us some free charging. And there's additional grants and other opportunities that we can apply for. We don't have any funding right now dedicated to purchasing chargers, so we'll try to take advantage of grants and other means.
With the grants, the chargers going in this year are costing the town almost nothing. It's a great program.
And I also want to mention those numbers I provided. Those were from a power options assessment. So taking in the numbers during that time, comparing gas versus electricity, for example. It also varies, town by town and the amounts of grants that we can collect. So the numbers are variable.
Yeah, but the chargers that we have going in this year that Julia has been working on, we have 2 going to the police station, 2 going to DPW, at the high school. So all of our schools will have chargers at them in town. So they're going to be kind of in strategic locations all throughout town, some dedicated for municipal use, some open to the public, but those are all chargers that aren't some big capital costs that we have. Through the grants, they're trivial costs to the town that then we'll have for the public charging. The town's not paying for the cost of that charging for the public that uses it, and in fact, we'll have a little bit of revenue that can go back into the maintenance of those. So it doesn't have to be a huge upfront cost. For something like the police station where they may need a DC fast charger if they are ready to start converting their fleet, that would be a bigger cost, but then we can look at some of the other funding opportunities that would be available through the state.
Gotcha. Okay. I think.
I have a technical question. Lots of coulds for me. I'm going to ask a naive question, and I apologize. One of the things we've been discussing on the water side is expansion of population, availability of utility. We are talking what I would understand generically as an enhancement of the expected use of electricity in the town. From an overall grid and availability perspective, are there any other supplemental concerns and costs we should be considering? I don't want to risk brownouts for the sake of meeting our sustainable green goals. Can you talk to me about how you've analyzed and built this in as well, please?
To that point, we're talking about maybe, 20 vehicles, I think, over time that are required to follow this policy. So from a grid perspective, it's not a load.
I'm not just thinking about the vehicles writ large through the chair. What I am thinking about is the raw, consistent draw in the town grid over time. Ideally, as you have noted, there will be people using the chargers commercially. I'm trying to understand what the potential impact to the broader community is of the vision that you are articulating. I want to make sure there are not potential supplemental infrastructure costs independent from the installation of the chargers, which you have been very poignant and articulate about not costing us anything. I'm sniffing for hidden costs.
So we had our consultant at ChargePoint come and do an assessment, and at all of the locations that we're currently putting chargers in, there are no updates that are needed. Occasionally you need a voltage increase. To do that, there are costs that sometimes Eversource covers. And I want to say that that has been taken into consideration when looking at the long-term cost savings that EVs provide.
So it sounded like your question was about the town overall rather than the municipal fleet, or am I misunderstanding?
So through the chair, and I'm doing a poor job, I apologize, King. I'm trying to generically ask, you're overall increasing the draw of a utility in town. The availability of the utility is a fixed resource. If we increase consumption, we either need to provide more, increase voltage, et cetera. I was trying to understand if you were baking that consideration and the broader uptick in infrastructure we might need to support this bigger picture adoption downstream. We have not historically been good at considering pass-through costs. That is not feedback for you.
To that, Power Options did an analysis of that for the municipal sites that would be covered by this policy. I do know there are state-level programs that are doing huge analyses, and I try to be somewhat aware of those, but it's hard to follow along with everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's better like that.
Yeah. My last question. So chargers that are going in this year, are those showing up on Kerry's budget?
They're not included in anyone's budget because it would be a grant, or this grant program.
They're covered through the Mass Evic program.
Okay.
That's why we're saying it's costing
That money
nothing.
comes in before we even start the project, or, right? I'm just, and again, I apologize, I'm trying to make sure I understand. We're going through a revised budget tonight, just 2.5 weeks before town meeting, so this.
It's not a reimbursable grant, so we would just pay whatever's out of pocket, per se. Part of that money is coming out of the municipal aggregation budget.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think I am good.
Thank you.
Again, I appreciate you taking all the questions. It's very helpful. So, and all the work that you guys have done in general.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep. So thank you all.
So are we looking for a vote tonight? Because
That's up to us.
Yeah, so I'm gonna look to the board for a motion.
I'd be happy to make the motion to approve the zero first admission vehicle policy as submitted.
I'm going to second that. So you guys can have a seat. We'll continue discussing as a board.
Okay, thank
Appreciate you
you.
guys for coming up. So yeah, just kind of thoughts between us. I know there's only 3 of us tonight discussing this, but
Yeah, I mean, do we have, we don't have the slideshow on our own, do we? Like, I saw it when it was on the screen.
No, we don't.
Okay. There was a long list of vehicles that are exempted, and I want to make sure we were looking at that, like anything that carries emergency equipment, fire, police. And then it sounded to me like all the department heads had reviewed and are comfortable with it now, and they weren't comfortable with it last time we reviewed it. So that's your fire, police, DPW, do they have the most vehicles?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
It feels too ethereal to me, Joe. There's too many woulds, coulds, hopes, grants, maybe grants. We just had the Senate State President and Representative DeRosa here not 2 meetings ago talking to us about the absolute yo-yo that is the state and federal funding process right now. I agree. This is absolutely a goal for the community. It's something I absolutely want to support. It is an elective capital expense while we are facing a significant budget deficit coming up. I can appreciate the framing that this will save money in the long term. Too much of this feels intangible at the moment. I support the policy, but there's too much ambiguity in the allocations here, especially this close to town meeting. I'd really like to see this come back with that hammered further out. I don't think I can support it at this time because I don't know that I can explain it.
This is not coming to town meeting, is it? Or
no.
Then I definitely can't support it.
So, Elaine, Lance, I'm looking for feedback from the town manager's office on this, because I think it's come a long ways. I think the exceptions, I have a lot more confidence in this than I did previously, just to understand the exception process better. And I think I'm still like a little shaky on more so like if sounds like we're already going ahead with chargers, but to clarify, was that grants we've already received or we're expecting to receive? Because that...
So I think we're expecting to receive them. We have not received them at this point. And I think the important part is the way they describe the decision hierarchy, decision tree. That's made, looking at EVs first, but that doesn't mean it meets the needs or that there's the budget for it. So you just keep going down the list and then getting what you can afford and what works for your department. So I think that helps a lot with implementation of this policy because things will change over time.
Yeah. So, and I apologize, everyone. I'm struggling a little bit. I'm a little slow tonight with this, but so right now, what's the process for some of these new chargers to be put in? Like what does that go through inside of town hall and in the town? I just want to understand that better. And Julie, you can come up and join us. I'd love to just walk me through, please.
So we're also very, very conscious of, additional costs to the town. So it just starts with an assessment with ChargePoint, So we had them come with their subcontractor, and they took a look at the electrical load, if there would be any infrastructure updates that had to be made. And then the following 2 days, what they did is sent us a quote, including what the rebates would look like. And so the next process would be us signing off saying, okay, please go apply for these rebates on our behalf. The next step is the application being in process with Mass EVIP. So say Mass EVIP says, we don't approve of this project, then we just don't move forward. We're not locked into any contract. If we get the green light from Mass EVIP and we get the grants that we applied for, then we would move forward with zero cost incurred to the town.
Perfect. And at that point, we have no cost incurred, and like from a decision process, because there's no cost incurred, it just goes through Julia's office, your office. Again, I'm just trying to understand.
It's just a pass-through.
Yeah, so I, of course, speak to the department heads, make sure that they're okay with the locations of the chargers and that it makes sense with their department's needs, and then we go through with it.
Okay.
And we're not going to buy any EVs unless we have a place to charge them. So it's a
chicken and egg, yeah.
So then, all right, okay. Thank you. This was very helpful because it sounds like, there is a lot that has to be done before anything moves forward. This opens us up to more grants, more funding, but we still need to go through a process. But it doesn't necessarily go to the residents at town meeting. It would work through town hall. Okay. All right. I think I'm in a better spot with this. Thank you.
Okay.
I mean, for me, that was a big one. I wanted to know like what the process was, how it gets approved, like where the costs come from. Understanding that like the rebate would kind of come in first makes me feel a little bit better about it. And then we can't really do the EVs unless we have the charging stations. So there's some dominoes there, and so I think from my standpoint, I was kind of struggling with this, but knowing that, the way the workflow would be, knowing that this would open us up to some grants on like the heat pumps, the solar stuff with the schools, I think I'm more comfortable with this now than I was. So.
The school committee chair has comments if you're willing to entertain them.
Welcome.
Sorry. I just wanted to point out that the school committee on our capital budget going forward to town meeting this year, we do have an EV van that's going through as a replacement for our special needs van for our 18 to 22 program, and it's going to need a place to charge.
But as of right now, we don't have a place to charge.
We don't have a municipal place. There are places to charge, but they're not owned by the
But
town.
not a
Not
municipal.
close to the building.
Yeah, so that seems a little.
But through the chair, here we go again. Why is this being purchased and approved before we've had the conversation here and made the change? I continue to not understand the intersectionality of the moving parts here. They're ultimately welcome to purchase what they want to purchase, but if they're looking for town infrastructure support, we should be acknowledging the support of that policy and its implementation here. I'm sorry, I support this policy, but it feels really complex and it does not feel fully baked and discussable at the moment, and I am concerned about the process by which it has been brought here. Frankly, I would have enjoyed the opportunity to have had a private conversation about this, seen the material first, and been a little more educated. This is a really complicated proposal to believe that we can be outwardly digesting in what is supposed to be 10 minutes in an open forum.
So
I'm a no. You can call the vote when you want.
Yeah, no, I just think this is an important discussion. And I think the big thing for me is, approval of this policy, like we aren't required to do anything right away, correct?
But it does create bureaucracy and complexity in response, and we begin a series of hopeful and aspirational revolving doors. We literally had the Senate President and Rep. DeRosa here explaining to us not to count on state funding, not to count on federal funding. And here we are.
Amy, any thoughts?
No, I think, like Matt said, we can move to a vote.
All right. I will look for a vote. Roll call.
Amy Rotobush, yes.
Kisner, no.
We're going to do Joe Clark, yes. So thank you guys for coming tonight. Appreciate all the back and forth.
Does that count if we don't have three? Yes.
We're still a majority.
Okay.
Quorum. All right, so now the board will move on and hear an update from John Evans, Superintendent of Schools, Keefe Regional Technical School, on enrollment, apportionment, and the MSBA process. So, John, welcome.
Thanks for your patience, John.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. John, excuse me, I don't have much of a voice, but I do have information to share about Keefe Tech. I'd like to begin by acknowledging and expressing my appreciation to Superintendent Bishop and the staff from Hopkinton Public Schools for their ongoing support of families who are considering our form of education, and in particular to the middle school staff who helped to coordinate all the 8th graders coming to make an informed decision about high school. So in terms of my presentation, I did submit background material. I don't know if you want me to go through the presentation or just speak through a couple of points. Happy to do either.
Whatever you'd prefer to do.
It might be helpful if it was possible to get the PowerPoint on screen. There's only about 4.
We've got it up, so yeah. It's kind of tough for you, it's behind.
No, that's great, thank you.
IT wizard.
Okay, so if we can go to the next slide. So just to let the Select Board know that across the state, there has been a regulatory change for career and technical school admissions. That is a pretty substantial change to what we've done before, which used to be a merit-based system where we looked at attendance, grades, discipline, sending school recommendations, and an interview. That has changed for all schools in Massachusetts, and in any school where there are more applications than seats, that school district needs to do a lottery. There are some weights built into the lottery, but quite honestly, they're not very high bars to reach. So every student who lives in a community and is becoming a 9th grader has the ability to get 1 entry in the lottery. There is an opportunity for 3 additional entries to increase the chances of being selected. Those are for a lack of major discipline, a lack of significant unexcused absences, and an expression of interest that could be exhibited through an interview. So the vast majority of our applicants had 4 entries in the lottery. Next slide, please. So with this dramatic change, we had some concerns at Keefe Tech about what would happen for our 5 communities, one of which is a city that has a substantial number of applications, well over 400 for our 9th grade class, and Hopkinton is our smallest community. We had a concern that if all entries just went into the lottery and were pulled, that could result in some significant challenges. So we wanted to put in, we worked with the DESE and our legal counsel to try to put in apportionment, which are dedicated seats for each of our member communities. The reason we wanted to do this is to avoid a surge in enrollment for our 1 city of Framingham and to avoid limited access for our other member communities like Hopkinton. By having apportioned seats, that would also ensure stability and predictability in our budget by having some predictability in our numbers, especially as we approach an MSBA project. We thought that predictability, in addition to the benefit of students, would be appealing from a financial perspective. So next slide, please. So the calculation that we implemented is based on 3 years of enrollment and the percentage from each community. So we looked at the last 3 October 1s. We did a calculation for the percentage that came from each of our communities, and we applied it to a seat count. What that resulted in for the town of Hopkinton are 8 seats out of 233 spots for the class of 2030. So again, that's 8 seats in the freshman class, and that, if that stayed stable, could result in 32 seats over the 4 years. So in terms of some of the details for Hopkinton, because we did our lottery just about a month ago, we had 21 applications from the town of Hopkinton. 1 came in after the lottery deadline, and 20 were included in the lottery. We selected 8 entries as our apportionment would indicate. 3 of those families or students said thank you, but no thank you, and declined. So we moved on to the next 3 in the list. So we currently have offered admission to 11 of our 21 applicants, and 10 of them remain on our waiting list. So that, in contrast to Framingham, just on the other end of the spectrum, where we had well over 400 applications, we had 172 seats. So the percentages do sort of match up in that regard, with Hopkinton being the smallest. For the next slide, please. I just wanted to indicate for the town of Hopkinton, there has been some concern expressed about why just 8 seats, but I do want to, there is a mathematical answer to that question, but also looking back at the last 10 years of Hopkinton enrollment, the average is 25.5, and we have never actually had 32 students during that time, so there's potential here for that with our current apportionment. And as a last comment on apportionment, the way our lottery actually worked, it was pretty amazing and actually, quite frankly, pretty intense because it happened immediately. It wasn't like drawing, it was just all the numbers came out. We were able to look through our computer program at what would have happened if we did not have apportionment built in. And what we discovered for this year is that Hopkinton, instead of having 8 seats, would have had 6. 2 students doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a 25% less if we didn't implement apportionment. So that was our best effort to try to have representation for our small member communities in response to a regulatory change that, quite frankly, we weren't advocating for, but we're trying to work with. So that concludes my overall information for you, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have about this or anything to do with Keefe Tech.
Perfect. John, thank you for the time coming in tonight, walking us through that. It's very helpful. It's certainly not something that, at least I'll speak for myself, that we think about every day. And, I've known numerous people to go through Keefe Tech over the years, so it's very helpful. So I'll just kind of open up to the board. Thoughts, questions? Amy?
Yeah, I will echo what Joe said, that I really appreciate the presentation and in explaining the complexity of the lottery system versus the apportionment and how they work together. And it sounds like this is a good solution. And I presume, like, over time, if we had more people from Hopkinton wanting to go, as we grow, the apportionment might change, and you might reevaluate it every so often.
Yep, there is definitely potential. It will still be based on the enrollment for each year's with a look back. There is a little bit of nuance that once we start the school year, if we have a program that isn't subscribed and we open up applications for at a later time, if that bumps up a kid or two from a member community, there usually aren't that much. It could bump up the percentage, and as a result, the apportionment going forward. But it actually, I think, will implement some stability. As we pursue the MSBA project, we hope to seek approval for in 2028. Before we go to bond, the amount paid for the unreimbursed expense will be based on 3 years of percentage enrollment. So we sort of wanted to use the same language in apportionment that we use in capital cost, and we hope that that stability and predictability would be appealing as we go into the unknown of a major project.
Thank you. I have some good friends from Ashland and Framingham who've sent their kids there and really enjoyed the program. So
that's great. Thank you.
I mean, we got to at least hold you briefly accountable for former Chair Ted Stone, and then we gave him to you on the school committee, so I suppose you're suffering. Now, I want to tell the people here, it has been absolutely wonderful working with John. I had the opportunity to go through and tour and just learn more about the story, and I will, after that loving Joe, compliment both Mr. Ted Stone and Ms. Sabine St. Pierre for the work that they are doing. I get quite a few updates about what's going on over there, and I feel really connected. If you do get the chance, folks, I recommend going over for lunch. It is the perfect way to see what they are doing over there. You're going to see kids who actually look excited to be at school and trying to learn something when they engage with you. It's actually a jarring experience for a minute until you realize that it's authentic and real. I think there is something special happening over there, and as we continue to evolve what it looks like to be successful and to thrive in 2026 and beyond, I think this is an absolutely wonderful resource for our community. So thank you for being thoughtful and ensuring that there is a way for our children to continue to engage with it, and for being such an open partner as we think about your growth and ours. I really like working with you, sir.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Good. Brian, thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I think we have to defer to John and his professional team around this issue. It sounds like it's well in hand, and I appreciate the efforts to try and balance it out. It's a tough one. I think Keefe Tech does a great job on behalf of all the communities it serves. Thanks.
Yeah, I have no additional thoughts or questions. It was very helpful, so thank you for bringing this to us, spending the time tonight, and kind of doing everything you guys are doing over there. So
thank you for having me and for the ongoing support. Have a good evening.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next, the board will review and consider voting on a revised FY27 budget. Kyla, would you like to join us? Welcome. So, Kyla, you or Elaine, who would like to walk us through kind of what's happened in the last 2 weeks?
I think Kyla has been living this more than anyone.
Yep.
So over the last 2 weeks, we recognized that we have a health insurance increase that we were not projecting in our original estimates. So we started with our quotes at 24% increase. We were able to negotiate those down to 18%. But in our sources and uses, you'll see that we only estimated about 9%. So that left us with a $1.2, $1.3 million gap in our budget. So between the town departments and the school department, we scrambled over the past week to see where we could reduce our operating budgets in a few days. We didn't have time to analyze. The school was able to cut some of their operating budgets by about $629,000, and the town was almost $300,000. So we got to a point where we only are recommending $289,000 in free cash to offset the cap, which is substantial given where we were 2 weeks ago. So on the town side, we made reductions in HR, DPW, fire, police, appropriation reserves, town hall, and the holiday lights to equal that $300,000. And the school did something similar across the board. So the school committee did approve the reduction in their operating budget last week. We went through appropriations yesterday and again today, and now we are hoping that you all have looked at the revised budgets and will do the same.
Perfect. So thanks for the overview. Obviously, I think it's important to reiterate for everyone like listening at home, like this was not something we could have foreseen, right? We've been going through the budget, meticulously for the last couple of months. And we typically get our our insurance estimate around this time, right? It's, right before town meeting. So like you said, it came in, 24% higher. It's now 18%. So, it's 1.3 million, it's a problem. I appreciate, I saw how much work was going on in the background over the last 2 weeks between the different departments to work through and figure out a way to close this gap. Obviously, 290,000 in free cash, it's not the best case scenario, but I think it's certainly a workable one. I think, we need to reiterate, especially like going into town meeting, especially these last couple of years, we fall back on free cash a lot, right? But we can't continue to do that. This was obviously something, it doesn't seem like there was many options to do it. So
going into next year, we know it's not going to improve.
Yeah.
So when we start our estimations or estimating our budget, we will forecast it accordingly.
Perfect. I'll kind of look for the board thoughts, questions. Amy, do you want to start?
Yeah, I was on the call the other day when we did the budget update, budget advisory group, and so we had found that health insurance went up so much because we have so much utilization in town. And I was curious when I was thinking about it, like I know the insurance that I have, through a big company, they offer these programs that they will give you for free that are evidence-based, and they can reduce your risk for more expensive things like, office workers, repetitive stress injuries and neck and back injuries. They have programs that they'll offer you for free to reduce the likelihood of having to have back surgery or something, which would be very expensive. And I'm just curious if our providers offer things like that would reduce costs in the long run for people, that they wouldn't have to have surgery for things.
I don't know about
our current provider.
Yeah. But this Insurance Advisory Council is supposed to start meeting on a regular basis. I'm sure that's something that they can start looking into.
Okay, that would be great. And are we locked in for a year with this company, or for 3 years, or?
It's 1 year.
It's a 1 year.
Every year. And so our provider does offer wellness benefits and so forth, including gym membership and other things as you described. So in the last couple of years, when we've seen the costs going up, we've increased the wellness component of things. And it does some things, but it's not enough.
Not enough, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's good for people too. Yeah, thanks.
I'm really uncomfortable with this. My understanding of existing town policy and the language that you and I are working on crafting right now is that we are explicitly trying to prevent the use of free cash for operational expense offset. I know you're doing this out of desperation, Kyla. I pass no judgment. You're doing creative accounting, which is exactly what you've been asked to do, and thank God you were excellent at it. This is not sustainable, folks. I've been harping up here for my entire term about the deficit we are facing next year. And here we are again, and we cannot find $300,000 in the budget to cut. Ms. LaPierre, what is the targeted deficit for last year, or for next year as of now, just as a ballpark?
I think it's around 5 million.
So we're already looking at 5 million in the hole for next year, acknowledging that we haven't even begun to forecast increased cost, again emphasizing the changes at the state and federal level in budgeting and expected grants. Guys, this is going to continue to get worse. At some point, we actually have to do something hard. I really take exception to the language used by the chair that there seems like there's nothing we can do. There's absolutely something we can do. You can say no. You can have less. There is a lesson that we teach all of our children and people in our life. I walked through the toy store with a 5-year-old. That little kid is grabby and he wants everything. He doesn't get everything because I can't afford it, he doesn't need it, and it's not good to get everything you want. This community has been getting everything it wanted for so long, and it has forgotten what the cost is that is associated with that. Gang, the cost is here. You stop me in the streets and you scream about the taxes and the cost of living here. This is how it happens, right here. There is something you can do. You can advocate for us to cut the budget. You can say enough is enough. Challenge us to be better, but we're not going to be if it's easy to just say yes. It is not easy for me to say yes, and I will not. You should expect better. Thank you.
Brian?
Well, this is not, it's not necessarily a surprise to me. We've had healthcare expense issues come down to the wire like the night before town meeting. Many of the years I've been on the board, I'm not surprised that there's a change. I'm not surprised it wasn't an exact forecast. The usage is something that gets figured out over time. So bottom line is I've seen this before. To Matt's point about the deficits in future years, if you go back 15 years ago and look at the documentation that was presented to town meeting 15 years ago, every year in the future had deficits. We always have deficits in future years. Why? I don't know, but it's just a thing. And we always figure out how to solve that problem. So I think the deficits, while they're a concern, that also is not a new phenomenon, and it's not a new issue that we have to address as well. My question is, so in town hall, we reduced $300,000 of expenses, and we're adding in another 290 on top of that for about $600K contribution to resolve the issue. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And the schools were in around that same dollar figure as their contribution to resolve the issue?
$630,000 from the school.
Okay. All right. I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I think, for me, the big thing is, as we go to town meeting, like, we need to be conscious of everything that we vote on. There's a lot of small things that get passed, and $200,000 here, $200,000 there make a difference. So I think, like, as a board, we need to, and we're going through some of the town meeting articles tonight, but anything that has a dollar value, to Matt's point, we need to scrutinize those things more. I don't think we came in with an idea of, providing services to the town, and, this forced some departments to cut some things on very short notice. So we are cognizant of that. But I think, not just the board, but every resident kind of needs to do their part when we get to town meeting to kind of reel in the rest of these expenses, because we can't, to just echo what Matt said, we can't continue doing this. It's unsustainable.
Both the town and school made some hard decisions, especially with the adds to staff. We have almost eliminated all of that.
Yep.
Through the chair, I would want to recognize, honestly, the work both Kylas are doing here. I'm speaking harshly, and I have my own perspective. I really do want to acknowledge the collaboration. Hearing that the schools and the town came up with the exact number, I mean, that's great teamwork. That is what we want the community to be doing. That is their expectation of us. I can have a different view on how we spend the money, but I can absolutely respect and recognize the teamwork here. Thank you. Thank you.
So I will look for, either a motion from the board, if there's further comments.
I move to approve the revised FY27 comprehensive budget.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
When do we have to take this vote? What's the latest day that we can take this?
Well, today, technically, we don't have another meeting prior to annual town meeting.
We could do it the night of town meeting, I guess.
What?
We could do it the night of town meeting.
Yeah, we could, you mean the morning of, convene early?
The staff will be more prepared if we do it tonight, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just thinking Mr. Manon's not in the meeting, and I was hoping that all of us could weigh in on it, but I understand. Okay, I'm good, thanks.
Yeah.
It's wanted confirmation that the appropriation committee has also voted on the budget.
They did.
They voted the revised. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Again, I think we're all going to have to be a little bit more active at town meeting in talking through some of these things. You know, I think considering the time constraints from when we found this out, how much work you guys did to actually coordinate in the background and get this done in less than 2 weeks so that we could, you know, keep all these meetings.
4 days.
Exactly.
That's all?
So, yeah, so I think it's, let's put it to a vote. Let's, you know, be more vocal at town meeting about, you know, each and everything that impacts the budget. So we had a motion and a second, so we will go roll call. Amy?
Amy Ritterbush, yes.
Matt?
Matt Kisner, no.
Brian?
Brian Herr, yes.
And Joe Clark, yes. All right, thank you, Kyla, for joining us tonight.
Could I just add that I agree with Matt that it's not sustainable. So next year, we will have to look at cutting some services. I don't think there's a
Yeah.
choice.
Yep, and through the chair, the broader point I'm trying to make is that we always start from where last year's budget ended. The higher that number is, the harder the conversation is. I appreciate you echoing. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, also just from my standpoint, I think it's, you know, there's been things that we voted on in previous meetings for
we're part of it.
articles,
Yeah.
and I think those are worth, you know, reevaluating.
Yep, you're 100% right, Joe.
We don't have a ton of options. I think that getting that approved was, you know, the thing to give everyone the most amount of time. I agree. But there's more to be discussed. So with that, we're going to move on. And now the Select Board will receive an update from the Permanent Building Committee regarding Center School, Elmwood School, and the Fruit Street Garage. Welcome.
Thank you. As the chairman mentioned, Dan McIntyre, Chair of the Permanent Building Committee. As you mentioned, I'm here to give you some background information on 3 articles that'll be at this year's town meeting. 2 of them sponsored by the Facilities Department for some study funds for Elmwood School, which we'll be inheriting from the school department soon. Some study funds for the Fruit Street Garage, and a CPC article for everyone's favorite project, Center School. We can flip to the next slide. So most of what I'm going to show you tonight is from a 2024 presentation. I think most of you have seen it. Were you on the board, Matt? I can't remember.
No, and I'm tenuous when I read, so I'll listen along.
Okay. So I'm going to go through it pretty quick, but if you have any questions, feel free to jump in.
Cheers.
So the Permanent Building Committee kind of inherited Center School from the Center School Reuse Committee, who recommended that the town keep the Center School property as a town asset. And it fell to the PBC to figure out what to put in Center School. So we started our approach with a comprehensive needs analysis. We interviewed every department. We talked to many of the committees. We reviewed the master plan, did public outreach forums, and spoke to the Chamber of Commerce about what to do at Center School. And then we took those needs and converted them into physical space. And what we realized was that the needs, and some might say wants, far exceeded the physical space we had at Center School. So we expanded our charge to look at all the major town properties, this building, Fruit Street, and Elmwood School, and kind of doing a holistic planning approach to addressing our needs. Next slide. So these are the major needs that we came up with through our outreach. I'm sure you've seen all these before and you're aware of those. I just want to mention a couple of them. You'll see bullet items 2 and 3, integrated pre-K and a life skills program. Those were initially requested by the school department to try to free up space at the schools and put it onto a town property. So we had planned for those in our initial evaluation. Those 2 needs have been withdrawn by the school department, although they haven't gone away. They may come back in the future. The other bullet item is the facilities and storage, and this is really related to Fruit Street. Every single department that we interviewed had need for storage, and that ranged from storage of boxes of paper to large bulk items to equipment and vehicles. This is stuff that's not used very often, but it needs to be protected and ready, so when it is called into service, it's available. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we took all that information and we did a master planning of the 4 sites in town and came up with 4 different scenarios on how to space all these needs out. Next slide. So option A is pretty much what the Center School Reuse Committee came up with, and that is essentially a split of Town Hall between this building and Center School. So we'll relieve some of the congestion in this building, send departments over to Center School, and work it out that way. That still leaves what to do with Elmwood School. So one of the things was that it could remain as is and used for additional programs. There's a perfectly fine gym over there that Parks and Rec would love to get into. There's plenty of room over there that they could do for programming. So there's that option. The other option is just to demo the building and bank the land for future generations' needs. Because they're not making land anymore, and the town could be in need for land in future for needs that we don't even know about yet. And then the third option is just to outright sell it and try to obtain some cash for it. With respect to Fruit Street under this scenario, we think Fruit Street is best suited for recreation and the storage needs. So we were looking at a new gymnasium over there to replace the Center School gymnasium, a new building for storage and the facilities department, and then of course the affordable housing need, which comes up in every needs study, was already planned for in the Fruit Street master plan, so we didn't make any changes to that. So with respect to this planning, let me just mention that when we did this with blinders on. We just looked at what we needed to do to meet the needs without looking at other things. But we know in the future we're going to have to take those blinders off and look at cost, look at taxes, look at debt. So with respect to Fruit Street and the storage issue, we were just planning on a new building over there. But the article that Dave Del Torre was sponsoring at this town meeting, we think is a more practical solution to upgrade the existing storage building over there before it deteriorates so much that it's unusable. So we support I think it's $35,000 for a study over there to see what we can do to upgrade that particular building to meet that storage need. Next slide. Option B would be to expand this current building with an addition out toward the back. This came up as a comment in the public outreach. We looked at it, but we found out it's really not a practical solution. It gives us some more space, but doesn't really address all the space needs, and it doesn't address the parking needs at all. So we didn't spend a whole lot of time on this particular option. Next slide. This is where we take all of the town services and essentially build a new town hall at Center School. That would require renovation of portions of the existing building and probably construction of new building to get the required space over there. That fulfills the Center School Reuse Committee's desire to keep the property. But then we decide what to do with this particular building. We had a few options for that. One is to move the school administration from their lease space into this building. That was another option that came up during the public outreach in an effort to save lease payments in the operating budget, just to move the school administration into an existing building. Another option would be to sell Town Hall And another option would be to renovate it for affordable housing. We did meet with the Housing Authority, and they certainly have interest in expanding their availability of housing, but again, they don't have any money to do it either. Elmwood and Fruit Street would be essentially the same as I described on the other option A. Finally, the next slide, please. The last option we looked at is the Elmwood option, which essentially moved Town Hall into Elmwood School. That's a very large building. That's about 78,000 square feet, more than we need to accommodate existing needs and future needs for town services. It's 19 acres over there, so there's plenty of room to expand and do whatever we want over there. That leaves, again, this building. It could be school administration, it could be sold, it could be affordable housing. Same as Center School. Probably most likely thing for Center School under that scenario would be to sell it. And then Fruit Street was really just affordable housing because Elmwood School would be big enough to supply all our storage needs over at Elmwood as well. So that's real quickly, those are the 4 scenarios we came up with. Next slide. So focusing on Elmwood, which is one of the articles that Dave Del Toro has at this town meeting for a study of what to do with Elmwood once the school moves out. Now, the Permanent Building Committee has already done some of the legwork on this one, and we know that it's a big expense to do anything at Elmwood School. We're looking at least $50 million to move Town Hall over there. So that's a big chunk of money that no one has an appetite to spend. Next slide. The PBC also looked at selling Elmwood. And some of these numbers we came from the Center School, where, as you recall, we actually put the Center School on the market. We hired an independent appraiser to come up with the appraisal of that. We talked to real estate professionals to give us the valuation of what the highest and best use of that property was. And we came up with 3 different scenarios for Elmwood School using the Center School budget numbers. Currently, Elmwood is zoned for single family, acre and a half zoning over there. So we're looking at, under current zoning, about 10 lots at about $100,000 per lot, or an valuation of about $1 million if we sold it as is. In order to reap the biggest benefit at Elmwood would be to rezone it for multifamily housing. We think reasonably the highest amount of units we get over there is about 142, which would result in about a value of about $11 million. We also looked at a third option, which is a lower density, and really density is going to relate directly to the value of the property. We came up with a density of 66 units based on the current density of the other multifamily developments on Elmwood. There's Apple Tree and Indian Hill. They have a density of about 3.5 to 4 units per acre. So we applied that to Elmwood, and we came up with 66 units and a value of a little over $5 million. But same thing's going to happen at Elmwood as what we learned at Center School. When developers take a look at this, they're going to look at the demolition cost. They're going to look at the hazardous materials. Just like Center School, we've got about $1 million of hazardous materials at Elmwood that needs to be taken care of. And these costs are going to be reflected in whatever bids we receive on that property. So if we went with multifamily housing at 66 units, we think the town might achieve $2 million from that. That's optimistic. If you recall, what we learned at Center School was we only received 2 bids on that property, and none of them came close to our appraisals. So the same thing may happen at Elmwood. Next slide. But we still think it's worth going through with this $75,000 request from the Facilities Department to refine these options at Elmwood School, so the town can start to plan on that once the school leaves it. Otherwise, it's going to end up with Center School, where it's been going on for 10+ years, and nothing's happened on that one. So these are some of the things that Dave is planning on doing with that money, and probably with the assistance of the Permanent Building Committee. Any questions on those two articles before we move to Center School? Okay.
I don't think so.
Well, I lost my slides, but next slide. So last year, we received $600,000 in funding from CPC to start on the architectural design of Center School. So far, we're 100% complete with the schematic design. We've done a schematic design cost estimate. We've met with Sustainable Green Committee. We've met with Historic. We're setting up a meeting with the Disability Commission to talk to them as soon as we get a little more work done on the site. And we've applied for a certificate of appropriateness to the Historic District Commission for the demolition.
Of the back part only, correct?
What's that?
The back part only, correct?
Of the back part, yes. Thank you. The whole project is a renovation of the 1928 section. There's a rendering of it there. The 1928 section, the exterior remains pretty much the same. We're putting an addition on the back, which will house an entrance lobby and the elevator shaft, so we have access up to the second and third floors. In addition to what the PBC's been doing, the town and the Hopkins Center for the Arts has had a lot of activity going on there. We've submitted applications for earmark funding and some grants, the one-stop grant and an earmark through Senator Markey's and Warren's office. We've finalizing the lease agreement with HCA so they can help with their fundraising and help pay for this. And once they have that signed lease, that's going to really kick off their whole fundraising campaign. So I can't take credit for any of this. Most of the heavy lifting of this went to Lance, Julia, who was here earlier, Dave Del Torio, and Kelly Grill at the HCA. Next slide. So I wanted to discuss this with you tonight. This is the schematic design estimate that the architect came up with for the rehabilitation of the 1928 section. I came to you last year with a $10 million budget estimate, coming tonight with an estimate of about $16.8 million. Now, we specifically set up our AE services contract to do a schematic design phase before we go into a detailed design phase, because we wanted to get this more accurate estimate than the budget estimate. So when we go into the next detailed design phase, we know where we need to focus on to try to bring those costs back down. Now, we've highlighted a couple of things in the smaller table below. Our budget estimate was carrying about $400,000 to repair the slate roof and do some other roofing work on the addition. It appears now that the slate roof is in worse condition than was anticipated, and we now are budgeting a full replacement of that slate roof. We need to do a little more inspection on that. There's some conflicting data on that roof. It was the subject of a previous town meeting article to replace it back in 2009, I believe. And like I say, there's some conflicting data on that. There's some data that shows it was replaced. There's some data that shows it wasn't replaced. But our visual inspection shows that there's some issues with it. And we're going to spend a little more time on that. We're actually going to get somebody up on the roof to do a more detailed inspection of the slates to make sure we really need to replace the whole thing. HVAC was another issue on the cost. It's more than double what we had budgeted for. Some of that might be related to the all-electric design that's currently incorporated into that. You know, as I said, we met with the Sustainable Green Committee. You know, they're all for that type of design. But we have directed our architect and mechanical engineer to go back and do a kind of a life cycle cost of both an all-electric option and kind of a flex option between fossil fuel and electric. The main concern, in addition to initial capital cost, is operating cost down the road. We think the electric might be very expensive for a 100-year-old building that we can't really tighten up as well as, say, the new Marathon School. And then there's a few things that just weren't included in the initial budget because it's more of a gross budget and you can get into that kind of details, but you know, town planning requirements require EV charging stations. We've adopted the stretch codes, so we need to pre-wire the building for solar. The facilities department really would like to put a generator there, so this can be an emergency shelter in the future. And then the whole electronics safety and security thing, you know, that all adds up to a few $100,000 that we need to evaluate to make sure we're actually going to put that in there. So that's the quick update. The article for Center School at this town meeting is to use CPC money, use CPC money to demolish the 1950s and 1980s section. That cleans up all the hazardous materials and makes the next phase, when we do ever get to construction, when the money's available for that, there'll be less risk for the contractor, knowing that the demo's done and it's a clean site, there's no hazardous materials there. So we expect the next phase to be, you know, better bidding than we hope if they had to do the demo at that phase as well. So we'd like everybody's to support to do the demo now and get that taken care of. With that, I'll turn it over for questions.
Thank you. So a lot of information here. It's very helpful to see it all kind of laid out together from school to school. You know, obviously like a 68% increase on the estimate is very concerning. I don't think anyone foresaw that coming. So I'll kind of look to the board. Amy, you want to start? Thoughts, questions?
Sure. No, I appreciate all the new updated information. So I think what I've heard in previous meetings before too, that the tearing down of the back part really has to happen because of all the hazardous materials. Then we just have to kind of do that regardless. But I just want to make sure that that wouldn't get knocked down and that would leave the other part of the building open to the elements, or that it could, like if we say we couldn't afford to do the renovation for a while, you do the demolition, the rest of the building will be protected.
Yeah, with a connection between the 1950s addition and the 1928 building, there'll be an open area there that we'll have to put in temporary cladding there to make it weather tight.
So they will seal it for?
They will seal it.
Okay. Thank you. And I think I'm really glad that we're planning for Elmwood School now, because I think we waited too long to start planning for Center School. So I support that small amount for the study to figure out what we can best do with Elmwood. And similarly for the Fruit Street, because that's an area on Fruit Street. That building really is in rough shape, and I understand we need to figure out what we can do, what are our options. And you're coming to Historic District about the slates, I think, next week, right?
What was that?
You're coming to the Historic District Commission next week about the slate?
Is it next week?
I think so.
Okay. Yep.
All right.
Good. Matt?
Thank you. So I will once again call attention to future board agenda item H, planning discussion, strategic plan, open space master plan. I am absolutely desperate to have all the different groups who are trying to iterate and develop in our town come and have a coherent, singular conversation with the board. It is incredibly difficult to follow it piecemeal. I share Joe's concern and am impressed with his quick math on that 68%. That's obviously a wild expansion in costs. However, this is one where I don't actually feel like I'm allowed to have a lot of fiscal discipline. The community has made it it abundantly clear a number of times at town meeting. They want the school to stand up. They want to see it be repurposed. They want to see it be preserved on the common, and they would really like it if it was used for community benefit. That's not how I would have done it, but I am elected and I represent them. I feel like their voice is uber clear on this, so I appreciate the plan and that it's moving forward. I'm concerned about the cost, but it feels well in line with what the intention of the community is. On Elmwood, I really want to echo Amy's comments. I really appreciate that we are starting to have the conversation now. Where you caught my attention was when you started talking about it almost like the administrative complex of the town, or at least the potential for it to be. We lost that opportunity with Legacy when we ultimately went the way we did with the land, and we're still scrambling to find an area where we can centralize and build out town services. I really like that we are potentially thinking about this as a space that can not only be a centralization of town services, but a ready expansion, both of the existing footprint as well as the space there. If I ever see that strategic open space plan, I think we could probably do some creative things with those 19 acres. So I would be in support of that, but I really do want to encourage you to be thinking big. I know we don't want to be doing CapEx projects here. The reality is there are a number of major town buildings and infrastructures that are not fit for purpose. We need to be thinking creatively and conservatively from a finance perspective about how we address that. I think your solution there looks like an interesting one. I will look forward to hearing more, but I really do want to applaud you for asking a hard question early and being very creative and upfront that you are in solutions and you are looking and listening to the community. I think it's a really good example of leadership, and I appreciate the work you brought forward today, confusing though it was.
Thank you. And I'm committed to be, next time I'm before you, I'm committed to bring that $16.8 million number down. I don't want to give you the impression that it's ever going to get back to $10 million, but I'm committed to bring it in less than 16.8. So thank you very much.
I'm going to let Brian go. See if Brian has any comments for you.
I'm sure he does.
You're not off the hook that easily.
Yeah. Hey, Dan. How you doing?
Good.
Good. Yeah. I struggle with the center school process and the number increase. I'm not surprised being in the industry. I do think we can still get this thing done through a private-public venture where we could preserve that building in its glory and still do something with the site that makes a private entity interested in working with us. And I think we could probably convince more people in town, given where we are headed financially and given all the other expenses we've got coming at us here for several years. Otherwise, if we stay the course, okay, but we're just not going to have the money, so it's only going to get worse as time goes on as it sits there idle. But I do appreciate the update and look forward to the discussion at town meeting. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I'm good, so thank you. We appreciate it. We'll be seeing you again.
Too much of a rush to get out of here?
A little bit.
We were friendly.
No, thank you. All right.
That's great information.
Moving on, the board will consider reviewing motions, taking positions on articles, and voting to sign the warrant. The select board will also consider discussing its town meeting presentations. Select board will consider recommending acceptance of Linden Street as a public way per Article 33.
Through the chair, since we're running late, would it be better to take the disclosure form next? I think there are people are here for that, right?
Those are all my neighbors on Linden Street.
Oh, okay, so they're here for the town meeting article, okay.
Melissa Ricos is here.
I will echo Amy here if I can ask and indulge my neighbors here for another minute. I think this will be a relatively quick conversation. We're going to be on town meeting articles for a little bit. So I would second a motion to adjust and move to the disclosure form.
It's Joe's decision, I think, really, right?
Yeah, I'm good to do with that because I think we, need to spend some time on the town meeting stuff. So happy to move on to the financial interests related to Concom. So instead, the board will consider reviewing a financial interest disclosure form submitted by Melissa Ricos, the chair of the Conservation Commission, to request determination on whether she may participate and chair hearings for the Conservation Commission where her employer, Time Bond, is providing engineering consulting services to the town's Department of Public Works. The board will consider determining whether the interest is not so substantial as to deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services, which the town may expect from Melissa Ricos. So, Melissa, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Melissa Ricos, 68 Ash Street, chair of the Hopkinton Conservation Commission, been on the board for about 15 years. And about a year and a half ago, I switched jobs and joined Time Bond as an engineering consultant. So this just came up because at one of our last meetings, DPW presented on the townwide maintenance plan that they had. When I started at Time Bond, you know, obviously I'm in the industry, and that's one of the things why I'm interested on the board. And I had told Time Bond I'm not participating in any Hopkinton projects. I'm a resident, I'm on the board. Made that clear, and it's a 600-person company. So I just do a small portion of the work there and don't need to be involved in those projects. So it came up at the last meeting, and I called the ethics committee. Their direction was to either recuse myself from the hearings or submit this form to the board if I felt, you know, I could act impartially, which would be my preference, but, you know, there are two options there. So that's why I'm here tonight.
Perfect. Well, welcome. You know, thank you for the overview. I think, you know, before I go to the board, like Elaine, I think we've had some of these things like this come up before, right? It's, you know, historically we've gone down that path. I think it's more than appropriate. Like you said, it's a large company. It's not, you know, like there's 5 of you in the company, and everyone kind of touches every project. So, like, I'll just kind of open it up, see how everyone feels.
Yeah, so I'm reading the form now. And so it looks like, so if, let's see, so sometimes you would recuse yourself if you had been working on the project, correct?
I very specifically do not work on Hopkinton projects, end of story, for Time Bond. So I am just looking for this because Time Bond has a history of working with the DPW long before I joined their company. So I know time to time these projects will likely come up. So I'm just asking not for a particular project, more looking for the decision, you know, to be universal for any projects if that's amenable.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Amy.
Go ahead.
I'd like to see you recuse. Both Brian and I routinely recuse up here. Brian for solar. I actually recused, I think, 2 sessions ago when a bulk chemical company was talking about doing work in town. I work for Takeda Pharmaceuticals. I promise you a bulk chemical company is not a competitor to Takeda Pharmaceuticals. I didn't want to have the conversation. I didn't want any appearance of impropriety, and I certainly didn't want to answer the conversation at work. In a company of 600, well, I can respect that you are not doing the work. What is good for the goose is good for the gander, and I don't think you should put yourself in a position in which your personal enrichment, being the success of the company writ large, allows your decision-making to be called into question. And I want to be clear, I have seen no evidence to suggest your decision-making has been impacted or called into question. Please don't hear it as an accusation. I'm offering this to you as preventative advice. When in doubt, recuse. The community always forgives when you are trying to avoid the appearance of impropriety. I think you can still be more than effective. Mr. Herr has shown you can be the chair of the select board while walking out on a major topic that the town routinely discusses on. I don't think it impacted us or him. That would be my preference and perspective.
Brian?
Yeah, I agree with Matt. I think you should be really careful here. I appreciate you coming forward and raising the question. Thank you very much for that. But I'm in the solar development industry.
Brian, we're losing you. I don't know if you're still in the car, but you hit a dead zone.
And the second somebody says the worst.
Yeah, it looks like Brian's going in and out.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're going in and out a little bit,
How about
Brian.
now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think she should recuse for her own safety. Yeah, I think it's best that she recuse. I do it all the time, as y'all know. And people can form opinions and create perceptions and or misperceptions, which are basically the same thing, over almost anything these days. And I just think it's really important that you recuse to avoid anything that could come up. Thank you.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. It's, you know, I agree with that. You know, there's some concerns there and stuff, and we don't want you in any position. But we certainly appreciate all of the work with the Concom, right? And I love that, you know, you spent, what'd you say, 15 years?
Yeah.
With the Concom? Thank you. I mean, we need more people that spend time like that volunteering in town. So with that, I will look for a motion from the board.
Well, the way it's filled out, I believe, is that she's disclosing the conflict, but it doesn't say whether, or that she would necessarily recuse, is that right?
I can still recuse myself. Yes, when I spoke to the group, I can recuse myself. I just will make my board aware of that. It came up the other day because there was a potential quorum issue, so I was thinking of it in that way. But, you know, obviously we all function in this realm, and, you know, just be more proactive about making sure when these are on the agenda, you know, informing the board we need to be there and be present. So
Perfect.
that was the concern.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Elaine, so kind of what's the recommendation here on the motion?
One suggested motion, but is there an alternate
I mean,
motion?
you could make a positive motion and then not vote in favor of it, or you could just not act on it at all.
I would, so through the chair, I would suggest we don't act on it at all. I think we've given it incredibly clear guidance, and it seems like we have an alignment here.
Well, I'm not sure if we've been incredibly clear, but so I think we're very happy to have her still be the chair of the Conservation Commission. It's just that when her company, she would defer to the vice chair when, or recuse herself when needed.
I'll recuse myself whenever time bond is presenting on behalf of the town or in general. Yeah.
I found that incredibly clear.
So are we kind of comfortable with like what that motion should look like then?
We've received her disclosure, and we're not going to vote on it, is it? Or-
So on the form, there's the determination sign, so that's what you'd be determining, that the financial interest is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services that are provided by Ms. Ricos. So that's the motion that you would vote on if you're acting on the request.
And a no would essentially be, through the chair, a no would be us saying that we believe there is potential impact.
Correct.
All right, so then
And then the no would still allow her to chair the board and recuse herself. Related to.
Only when needed, yeah.
Just want to be clear about that.
Oh, it's an
Right?
important decision.
Makes sense?
All right.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, so then, in that case, through Joe, I move to determine that the financial interest is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services which the town may expect from Melissa Ricos.
Got a motion, a second. Do we have any further discussion?
No.
Roll call.
Amy Ritterbush, no. But I really appreciate you doing the chair work.
No, thanks for taking.
This is a best practice, and I hope people see it that way. Matt Kisner, no.
Brian?
Brian Herr, no.
And Joe Clark, no. Thank you for coming up, doing this. We look forward to continuing your work on the Concom.
No, thank you all.
So thank you, Melissa. All right. So moving on, we're going to go back to the annual town meeting. Consider reviewing motions, taking positions on articles, and voting to sign the warrant. I think in the interest of time, and we have some residents here, I know there's, we got Linden Street represented. So I'd love to kind of start there so that we can help with our neighbors here.
Goons. I love you guys. It's like 10 houses on the street. This is like 20% of the population. Come on up, guys.
Yeah. Come join us.
In the event there are questions. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah. So I forget, since I was not present last time, we had the public hearing. Can you guys just kind of recap where we left with Linden Street?
I'll take a swing.
Because it's not a public hearing tonight, correct?
Yes.
Correct, it's not.
So I'll take a swing, gang, jump me ahead as you see fit. So we had a discussion last time around what I would call the right of way, essentially. The Linden Street is built on an old rail bed. In theory, the town has the ability to take from 66 feet from the center. There was some obvious concern from the residents because that would essentially be West Main Street. So the town had sent some drawings, essentially, that 66 feet was on there, and I think it caused some churn with the residents about what it was going to look like. So I had some conversations with Director Reed, circling back and getting back to all of you here now. The town has absolutely no intention of widening the road. They would very much like to maintain it as it is if the town votes in favor of supporting the water main replacement project. ultimately that is the driver for ripping up and repairing the roads, and that has benefits from a town safety perspective. We've gotten feedback about the fire hydrant and just general utility. There is also some drainage and culvert work that they want to do that would be part of this as well. So from a 2U perspective, it is an acceptance of the street, meaning the town agrees to maintain, plow, continue to provide services. As part of that, because it's associated with this project, there would be a repaving of the street, an enhancement of the water main. I believe it has a fire hydrant install and an upgrade and assumed ownership of the culvert. I'm going to defer to Elaine then to understand if we had any further concerns from a council perspective, but I think we ended the conversation last time with the town is ultimately always welcome to assert right of domain. We would have to have conversations about what purchase of land would look like, but ultimately it's City Hall usually wins when you fight City Hall. Have I done a remotely decent job of summarizing this, Ms. Lazarus? Yep. Perfect.
And I did reach out to town council, asking about the issues that came up with regarding the taking, or becoming a public way. So Jay Telemann responded that because it's an old railroad, this complicates the matter. Ownership can be tricky if the title isn't clear, and if that's the case, then the process to gain title can be arduous, just because it's an old railroad bed and this happens everywhere. He wouldn't want to engage in a taking unless the title is clear. If the land is to be donated, he recommends that a full title be done, ideally by the owner, and some owners may have already done this in the past. And a vote could require that, but it could also be required without a vote of the select board or the town meeting. Once town meeting votes to accept the way, there's 120 days to get everything done and filed at the registry. So that clear title work would have to be done very quickly. If we don't think there's enough time for that, then it would have to be another year, perhaps.
Okay, so I'm going to, through the chair, I'm going to brave translation there. So it sounds like you're saying if the people of Linden Street essentially donate what is the existing road to the town, there is no cost to the town and no cost to them, and it significantly lowers the bar of complexity from a title and deed perspective. And to the people of Linden Street, it sounds like this would be land that you might theoretically have some claim to, but has largely been your street the entire time I've known you. Hopefully you would see it that way as well if we were to continue a further conversation there.
Gotcha. And this one's already been in front of the planning board, correct?
Yes, planning board recommends approval.
And so we deferred, Joe, because we wanted to get clarity from the town council because that issue came up about title.
Perfect. And this is not a public hearing, but I'd love to quickly hear just from all of you, you made the time tonight. You're the residents. I'd love to hear your opinions quickly.
Dave Siop, 8 Linda Street. I've lived on Linda Street for about 25, 26 years. The water line has been a problem for years. It's an old steel water line, and it's very corroded inside. I've seen that water line repaired probably at least 15, 20 times. I don't drink the water because I have triple filters, and you'd be amazed how I change the filters every 3 months because the rust inside that water line. Not saying just when it comes down, it's a plastic pipe coming down Curtis, but it is a steel water line from Curtis to the last house on the line. And it breaks all the time. It just needs to be repaired. And I'm concerned about drinking it. I don't drink it. It's just a health issue. You know what I mean? Because there's something going on that water line with the corrosion. That's my main concern. And I'm glad it's only taken me 20 years to get to this point, and I appreciate it. The street needs to be repaired too, and the drainage. I understand about the drainage and everything else. It makes perfect sense. So I'm all for it, and I think the other neighbors are also.
Anyone disagree with that?
Peter Mezzett, 10 Linden Street. Yeah, that was a good point about the water. We don't have it. We're the last two, and we're okay not extending it, but I don't know what the town would want to do. The width of the road was the main issue that Kevin O'Leary brought up. I think he'd be happy to see that it's not going to go 33 feet in each direction. In fact, the existing culvert should remain. Maybe it needs cleaning up. It's only at the point in front of your house where it crosses under that you got to watch out.
It definitely is corroded and or broken because I have had flooding coming up from my lawn from that pipe underneath.
Yep. Start doing your research on the water main replacement project, gang, because that needs to pass.
The water main and the culvert that runs both above and below ground on one side of the road, if both of those are taken care of, definitely all for it.
Perfect. Well, again, I appreciate you guys coming, sticking around for a little while. I just wanted to, while you made the time, we of course love to hear from you.
I just have a question on kind of the notification to residents, because we represent a lot of the street, but we're not 100%. There are two neighbors that aren't here. How is that will there be anything communicated to them specifically in writing, or?
So you're all notified as potentially impacted abutters, is my understanding, which is how we kind of got here to begin with. Go ahead, Elaine.
Yeah, every abutter was notified of the public hearing on April 7th.
Yes, and that's why most of us responded. So if it is accepted at town meeting as a public way, is that it? And sort of then the work will start?
Some additional communication, but we'll start working on the process right away.
And I want to really emphasize to you again, it is not the acceptance of it as a public way, it is the approval of the water main replacement project. There is absolutely no money for any of this work if that doesn't pass. I know that doesn't impact how the board is going to discuss it here, but as people who will be concerned and trying to think about how to talk to your neighbors about this and why they should support it, I want you to understand these things are very linked.
It's a water replacement project. That's what it's been from the beginning.
Yes, but us accepting the road and the money to do that, part and parcel.
Yep, I understand.
So if the water main project doesn't go ahead, public way or not, doesn't matter.
Bingo. And through the chair, if I can, I just want to say thank you, and I want to really emphasize this to other residents. There are an awful lot of small historical back roads, not well paved. This is how you move the select board. You show up, you sit here for 2 hours, and you make it clear your voice is going to be heard. I've also gotten a number of emails from these people, some of whom are not here. They have been very loud in a non-hostile way. They have made it clear they needed to be engaged with. You're seeing what happens.
Perfect.
Thank you for your support, Matt.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
I just want
Thank you.
that we could go ahead and accept the road without the water main project. If the vote of town meeting is an independent vote.
Yeah, we just won't have any money to do anything.
Yeah, I got a quick question. If this doesn't pass, who is going to be responsible for repairing the water line when it keeps breaking and fixing the road? I'm just asking if this does not, I'm just curious. Because right now, they don't come down and pave and repair the road. I pave the road. I repair the road. You know, the potholes and everything else. I call it, they don't come down. They come down Curtis because it's not accepted, I understand.
Yep.
But in the future, if this does not pass, how would you, in the plowing, how do we address that? I'm just curious, are we gonna lose our services?
Do we have a clear answer for that?
I mean, it's not a public way now, so it would be continuing what occurs now.
Yeah, we understand. Okay. Okay, I was just curious.
Yep.
Oh, that's a good question, Dave.
All right. Well, I appreciate.
Get another year always too.
If there's comfortable, I would make a motion in support of Article 33.
A second.
Got a motion and a second.
There's I don't know that we included it here, but there's the vote to lay out the way.
Oh. Is the motion?
Sorry, I could only see what was on the screen above me.
Look at the last meeting.
Yeah. Thank you for making the time for them, Joe.
So it's to recommend that the annual town meeting vote to accept Linden Street as and for public way, and to authorize the select board to acquire by gift, purchase, or eminent domain any land or interest in land necessary for such laying out.
Which
So
article
moved.
is that? Okay, so moved. That works. Second.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Brian, you still out there?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry about this. Just tough right here. So is Mr. O'Leary satisfied with where we are right now? That was my big concern last week.
He's not here, Brian. We can only frame to you that the majority of the concern was that we were going to actually expand the road and try to take what was the full allowance. And we've been trying to make it really clear our intention is just, if everything is approved, to repave the road as stands, no change to existing allocation.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Okay, so then roll call.
Amy Roderbush, yes.
Matt Kisner, yes?
Brian?
Brian Hur, yes.
And Joe Clark, yes. Thank you all for making the time tonight.
May 2nd, Saturday morning. Ayes.
All right.
Thanks, gang.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you for waiting.
All right, so we did that one, while we had residents in the room. I think, a couple of these things we got to move through. Obviously, Elaine and Lance, we had a discussion today around, putting these on the consent agenda for town meeting. I think there's a few, or any of these ones on here on the consent agenda? I'm trying to recall.
If I could just real quick, one of the most important things we want to do tonight is the signing and approving of the warrant for the 2026 annual town meeting. Then I would would it make sense to start there, Elaine, you think, and then get into the recommendations? I don't think at this point the board is considering removing any articles from town meeting. So this is probably the most important vote to take this evening. And then, yes, we'd want to get the rest of the recommendations done to be included in the warrant and motions document. However, if a decision isn't made on some of those recommendations, it could wait till town meeting theoretically. Ideally, it'd be good to get them done tonight.
Accomplish everything this evening.
Yes.
But
the most important thing is
posted before you meet.
Correct. So,
To see that
No.
motion?
yeah,
So I neglected to put that in the script. I apologize.
Oh,
It's just, that's on me. So it's really just a motion to approve the warrant for the 2026 annual town meeting.
Make a motion to approve the warrant.
And to sign, yeah.
2026 annual town meeting and to sign the warrant.
Second.
motion and a second. Any discussion on that?
No, I think Osceola was the only one that we were kind of wobble on, and we made a very real decision in your absence that we were going to say yes to ultimately give the opportunity to the community. I don't think there's anything else that we were concerned about.
How about the fingerprinting one?
I think we did vote on that last time.
So once you vote to approve the warrant is the warrant and it'll go, and then we can talk about all the articles.
Okay.
About like our recommendations?
Everything is on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't want to remove that. To Brian's point, I don't want to remove that one from the warrant, but I absolutely still want to hear discussion on it.
Yeah, I think, my opinion in general, especially considering the revised budget tonight, is, and in the interest of time, we need to move forward with the warrant, bring everything to town meeting. Right after we do this, we can have discussions around whether we actually recommend things. And then we can continue that, right at the beginning of town meeting, right? We talked about that today as an option. If we need to we'll be convened the second town meeting starts. But if the town is looking for, an updated opinion from the select board, we can do that pretty quickly at town meeting. So I think between tonight, but I don't see any reason to take stuff off tonight. It just doesn't make sense. So, we already have a motion and a second. Do we have any other thoughts against that? Because I'd like to put it to a vote.
I'm good.
Brian?
I'm good.
Okay. Roll call. Amy?
Amy Rodenbush, yes.
Matt Kisner, yes?
Brian?
Brian Herr, yes.
And Joe Clark, yes. So it's not on here, but we have approved and signed the warrant, in the process of signing the warrant. So now we can kind of go through some of those things.
Some require our motion on them, right, or our recommendation, right?
Does everyone listed on here on the motions article require select board recommendation?
Is it?
Yes, so those should be the remaining.
That require it?
Yep, they require it.
I'm looking at this one. Do you see, we got that one today? It has which one we already recommended and which one we haven't recommended, or?
The matrix?
The matrix?
I'm looking at the motion doc because the motion doc has the required recs in it.
Hang on.
Matrix does have an updated, if it helps, it has the recommendations that have been made thus far from other committees and boards.
All right, do we want to go through that one?
Okay, so it looks like the first one, number 6, the FY27 operating budget requires our recommendation. We voted the revised budget, but not the article, is that?
Yep.
Okay. Right.
We essentially voted on this earlier. I wonder if there's a way to just go through and see which ones are easy yeses here, and we can do a big yes on ones that are just obvious and then have discussion on the rest. So like OpEx, we're definitely going to approve transfer to capital expense stabilization.
That's a no action, so there's no money going into capital stabilization this year.
The litigation settlement, I would be surprised to see us not recommend.
So the litigation settlement update is we had the mediation this week, and a settlement was not reached.
Oh, well, that's
Another couple of weeks for the lawyers to talk, and perhaps work something out. So we could perhaps make the motion at town meeting or make the recommendation at town meeting.
So theoretically, there could be a settlement reached by then, but as of right now, it would be no action,
That's correct.
correct?
Community preservation funds and community preservation recommendations, those are separate budget from the town. Our stance has pretty typically been we support those allocations. And again, please, I'm not trying to speak for everybody, I'm trying to drive
You're
like
just
a
going through.
bundle.
I'm looking for anyone to, like, if Matt's calling one out, if anyone has a different opinion, I'd like to hear that right now.
Please, because I'm trying to get to a big motion of can we do like 9 yeses at once?
I'm with you.
Okay.
We're aligned. So I agree. I don't see any issues with that. I think, again, more of this stuff is, open, transparent discussion at town meeting around the impacts of everything that we approve. Amy, Brian?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you would just be so kind as to read out the ones you think are the easiest. Again, I can't be looking at my phone while driving.
That's exactly what we're trying to do, Brian.
Brian, that's what we're calling out now. So we just went through community preservations funds and community preservation recommendations.
Yeah, I'm fine
Can we start
there.
again? Which one we're voting
All right, so
together?
right now-
Operating budget?
Right now, I have FY27 OpEx, transfer to CapEx stabilization, which Elaine says is nothing, community preservation funds, and community preservation recommendation. Those are the 4 I've got in there now.
Okay, so the capital expense stabilization fund, though, wouldn't we recommend no action? Yes. That's a no action, not a.
Okay, so we know what we're doing, but the other one is, so yes, 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 I guess if you're comfortable here. So authorize lease of 148 Lumber Street. I'm just going to generically suggest that we took a pretty clear position last time that we're just sending the things to town meeting for the town to have a discussion about. Are we comfortable just with the blanket yes right now on Lumber Street, Woody Island, and the easement?
So Lumber Street is the historic building, right?
Yeah, so Lumber Street, a few years ago, town meeting voted to authorize the sale of it.
Yep.
And now the Historical Commission is suggesting you might want to lease instead.
Okay, and the Woody Island Road, a neighbor would like to purchase property that we don't need.
2 neighbors.
Okay, so I'm happy to do all those together.
Okay, and then the easement is 64.
64 Grove Street.
Oh, that's for a sidewalk project?
Sidewalk and drainage.
I don't see any issue there either.
Anyone have concern with that? Okay.
No.
And then, in theory, I'm of the opinion we kind of already voted last time on the acceptance of Osceola. I can see that there are different things here, but my stance is that the 4 of us in your absence, Joe, made it clear that we thought that should just go to town meeting.
We're voting whether we recommend approval or not, so it's different to send it to town meeting versus recommending approval.
Yeah, I think we need more discussion on that one, because I'm totally comfortable with what you guys did from getting it on.
Okay, good.
I think that was the right thing.
All right, so let me summarize real quick then. I moved to recommend approval of articles relating to the FY27 operating budget, community preservation funds, community preservation recommendations, to authorize the lease of 148 Lumber Street, the disposition of 0 Woody Island, and to accept the easement at 64 Grove Street.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Further discussion here? Roll call. Amy?
Rotovich, yes?
Matt Kisner, yes?
Brian?
Brian Hur, yes.
Joe Clark, yes.
Okay, Paul.
So that kind of checks.
Thank you for letting me drive a little there, sir.
Do we, should we do, for going back to the capital expense stabilization for no action, do we even need anything on that? Do we need to just like formalize it?
Just a vote of no action.
Is there anything else that requires a no action?
Were you going to do that on the Costa Brothers, or were you going to wait until?
Seems like we might as well wait.
I move to recommend no action for transfer to the capital expense stabilization fund.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. So there's discussion. Amy?
Rotovich, yes?
Matt Kisner, yes?
Brian?
Brian Hur, yes. Yes.
Joe Clark, yes. Okay.
Okay, so I think that leaves CapEx, one-time expense, water and sewer, and drainage improvements in Osceola.
Hawthorne Lane as well.
That was, yeah, I'm sorry, I was being too general. That was where I was going with the drainage improvements for Hawthorne Lane.
The citizen petition for Hawthorne Lane area.
Are we required to make a recommendation on that one?
No, because it says no funding, non-binding. I mean, I'm reading the packet. I'm only as smart as what you have handed me. I'm not even that smart.
It's a non-binding question, anyway.
Right.
So then we don't need a recommendation.
No.
No.
If someone would like to make a recommendation, now would be a great time to do it.
I don't think so. I think we should just let the public, because it's non-binding, have the discussion.
I agree.
I agree. So we're going to cross that one. So let's just start going through capital improvements. Who would like to start? I think, it's, in the wake of, our new insurance-driven deficit, I want to go through them.
I'm really leery of relitigating the CIC presentations that came to us and the recommendations that have already been made. I know why we're having the discussion, Joe. This is me saying this. I want to respect that there is a process that has taken place and people have been SMEs and given us their opinion.
Yeah.
I know, this is tough. I gotta use the restroom.
Amy, Brian, thoughts around?
So capital improvements, that's a large group of things. Which article? So this document doesn't have numbers, and that makes it hard to navigate. So
Here's,
so this one, the one that we're supposed to vote on. I can, if I know the name of. Okay.
Which?
Is it one big?
Is that a copy of the warrant? Can I actually get one?
This is the warrant, yeah, it doesn't include
doesn't
the
have
motions and the
these are ones that
costs.
we designed.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the cost, it's just.
Yeah.
Can you just, what article number is the capital?
they were in the last packet.
The article with the capital is Article 13.
Which one? 13?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And is that like a list of items?
Yes. It has 32 items.
Okay.
32?
Correct.
It is a lot of items. Okay, I'm just looking through. These were all presented to us, so I'm sure they're fine. I just wanted to make sure we know what we're voting on.
Yeah, I think we went through all of these. I'm kind of hesitant to go through them all again, knowing that most of these departments, found cuts in their OpEx budget to kind of make the deficit work.
And they seem to be all funded by free cash, is that Article 13?
Except per ambulance fund.
Except for the ambulance fund. Okay, so I'm happy to make a motion to approve the Article 13 capital improvements.
Sorry.
I'm happy to make a motion to recommend approval of Article 13 capital improvements, which is a long list of
Second.
projects.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second. Matt, while you were out, all we talked about was, kind of the process, like you said. Everyone seems to be in agreement with that. Brian, do you have any different thoughts?
No, I'm ready to vote.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Amy?
Amy Rodebush, yes?
Matt Kisner, yes.
Brian?
Brian Herr, yes.
And Joe Clark, yes. Okay. One-time expenses.
Article 14, what was that?
So that one has a total of 8. And again, these are all things that we have gone through. So it doesn't have all the details, but just to get a look of.
Yeah, so these are all projects, not a capital.
I already grilled them about this.
So these are all projects, but not capital projects. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly comfortable. I look at a couple of these next ones too. I think we've gone through them, we've discussed them, and I think it's critical for them to go to town meeting and be discussed at that point.
Yep.
I don't think I've heard anything to make me rethink any of them. So look for a motion.
I move to recommend approval of articles associated with one-time expenses, water enterprise capital improvements, and sewer enterprise capital improvements.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Brian, did you hear that kind of, per my comment, we threw in also the water enterprise capital improvements and the sewer enterprise capital improvements? Did you catch that, Brian?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we motion and a second. Roll call.
Amy Rodebush, yes?
Matt Kisner, yes.
Brian?
Brian Herr, yes.
And Joe Clark, yes. All right, so that brings us to, we're holding off on Costa Brothers while they potentially do litigation. It really brings us to Osceola.
Osceola and Fingerprinting.
Hawthorne, we said we were not going to make a recommendation in either way, right? We're not required to.
Correct.
Yep.
So then Osceola and Fingerprinting.
Yep, so let's do them one at a time. I think it's important because there's multiple, like we talked today, there's multiple parts of the Osceola one, right? And, you know, some things can be accepted without, you know, driving, you know, a funding decision. So I think we should go through that quickly just so that the board, you know, is understanding. And because remind me, what was it? Like we could have, you know, one, like the first item accepted, but if the other ones were not, then might not have been, I forget, was it not binding? I forget what we discussed.
Right, so, I mean, Elaine, unless you want to speak on it.
No.
Okay. So there's a lot of items here on this warrant, as you can see. I think there's 8 total. And right now, Parker has broken those into 3 different motions, but to kind of fit the general context of those articles, basically, you guys already voted on the street acceptance to lay out the Osceola Way, so that part's been handled. But the other motions in here that speak to allocation of funds for a couple of purposes, one being signs for private ways, another was for essentially a program to help accept future private ways towards public acceptance. So those are potential things you could weigh in on. The other is a bylaw change. He did accept the select board's recommendation to change the $1,000, instead of just eliminating the $1,000 limit, to his motion now is $10,000.
Sorry, wait, did you say something changed from 1,000 to 10,000?
Yeah, so you weren't here, Joe. So at the last meeting, I think it was discussed when they talked about this, there was some concern around Parker had proposed to just eliminate the $1,000 limit for repairs to private ways and just have it be open-ended. The board discussed maybe a $10,000 limit. So Parker, in his submitted motion, has gone with the board's previous suggestion of now recommending a $10,000 instead of just no limit.
Okay.
So that's a general bylaw change. The board technically does not need to recommend on general bylaw changes, but he did take that feedback.
That is the only one we actually technically need to make a recommendation on whether or not we recommend conveyance.
So generally, it's the allocation of funds. So he is the warrant articles. He's talking about appropriating funds for those purposes, for the private signs and for the project. Right now, the motion he submitted he's not actually asking for any funds, but the way he wrote it was so that he could ask for funds. But the way he's written it, it's non-binding. It's more of a statement of purpose, the way he submitted the motion, so it muddies the water.
You lost me. I see 3 things here. I see accept conveyance of Osceola, appropriate fundage for signing, appropriate funding to support a townwide program to evaluate. I'm shelving the other 2. Where is the discussion or the article around acceptance of conveyance? Or is it all just part of one article?
Are you talking about number 5 on the warrant?
So there's 8 items on the warrant, there's 3 motions. So
Article 38.
But I think this is where the confusion is, because there's 8 things on there, right? So it's hard for us to distinguish what the actual motions are. I know this does not have motions in there.
So there is I did email earlier, if you want to pull it up that way, there is the up-to-date motions document, so that if you have access to that.
So there's 3 separate motions.
I'm able to get one too in the office if I need to.
One to accept it as a public way, one as to amend the phrase a sum not to exceed $1,000 to a sum not to exceed $10,000. That's the bylaw change, I guess.
That's the bylaw change, yeah.
Appropriate funds from free cash to support a discretionary program for the evaluation and stabilization of private ways for acceptance.
Right, so in that motion 3, he talks about, I move that town appropriate funds of free cash, but he doesn't actually specify a dollar amount. So it really is kind of a non-binding motion. So.
And are we required to make a recommendation on?
No.
Yeah, not unless he appropriates.
Right, so our discussion today was, at the moderator's meeting, was that if the petitioner at town meeting puts a dollar amount in here, you'll have to then convene a quick meeting to form a recommendation.
Okay. So
But
I
it's
think
fine to do that now without the dollar amount.
Yeah, so I think I'd rather not recommend approval of any of these if it's not required right now. But let town meeting discuss them all.
Thus far, CIC and Planning Board have recommended disapproval of the article as a whole.
So,
That's where I am too.
so yeah, I'm not okay with like recommending these. You know, I think the rest of our boards and committees took the right approach. So fundamentally, is it easier for us to say the motion as approving and then we make a vote, right?
It's not even required, I think. We could.
Well, I think if we have an opinion on it, we should make a recommendation.
Okay.
Because, you know, if there's a motion on the floor during town meeting, we would at least have something to fall back on and then move forward from.
I move to recommend approvals of articles associated with acceptance of conveyance of 0 Osceola Drive to the town, to appropriate funding for signage at the entrances to private ways or groups of private ways, identifying such ways as private ways, and to appropriate funding to support a townwide program to evaluate private ways that are candidates for acceptance as public ways.
Second. Okay, so we made the motion as is. Now, again, just for clarity, I thought that was the easiest way for us to move forward. I'm not in approval, like in recommendation for this, so I'm going to go no, but roll call. Amy?
I think I'll abstain because I don't think we should do it either way.
Matt Kisner, no.
Brian?
Brian Herr, no.
And Joe Clark, no.
Through the chair, I do think there is a well-heard point from Mr. Hapto that we do need to come up with a long-term plan around these private ways. That part of this I don't want to move past. I just don't know that I'm ready to do it yet. And I don't know that we have the answer.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. All right, so this moves us on to the civil fingerprinting for a common vic license. And I think we've had some discussion in the past about this. It has been a little while. I think there's a lot outstanding. So I don't know if it helps, like I can share kind of my thoughts. I think, you know, I think this came from a really good idea and a really good point, but it started to overstep the board's like responsibilities in this, and you know, in how they engaged with the businesses in town. I believe we got an update tonight from the Chamber of Commerce. Wasn't that one of our action items that we wanted to have in previous discussions on this? And so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but maybe just to capture, you know, in general, they were opposed to it. I don't know if someone I can read some of the highlights, but to summarize it, there was opposition from the Chamber of Commerce. And I think that's an important thing to recognize. So I don't know, additional thoughts from the board here?
I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce and specifically Executive Director Monjo for responding to us here. This was, I don't want to say it was exactly what I was hoping for. This depth of response is what I was hoping for. I didn't have a particular opinion about how they might go. Very clear that they are representing to us that they view this as burdensome with narrow benefit. They view it as redundant. They view it as potentially being a disincentive to business. And the letter highlights that there is relatively small statewide adoption given the risk level of our community, and suggests that there may be further deleterious impact to businesses. So overall, I think I'm summarizing here, but they make pretty clear that they would not be in support of this, but they remain adamantly committed to ensuring policies that protect public safety. I hope that was a decent summary.
I think that's fair. Does anyone want to make a motion? We can always discuss more.
Is our recommendation required?
No, but you are the sponsor. Someone will have to make a motion to either recommend, or you can make a motion to dismiss. I mean, you can make a motion to the town meeting, you know,
So,
or dismiss.
yeah, so I'm struggling a little bit because I don't think we have enough here to move forward.
Correct.
Like with the discussion, and I don't think town meeting is the right place to have this discussion. I think, like, I'm kind of going back, I know, I'm kind of going backwards, but like, I'm not seeing the path forward here, like inside a town meeting discussion. So, like my gut is saying it would be something to dismiss, but in the spirit of this whole thing, it was to bring it to town meeting. So I'm kind of challenged with this. So I will look for the board for
We've sort of
motion?
already made, through the chair, Joe, we've sort of already made the decision to bring it to town meeting because we signed the warrant, or we already voted to approve the warrant, and this is a warrant article.
So it's still going to be at town meeting.
It's going no matter what we do at this point. That die is cast.
Yep, good point.
Town meeting can defeat your motion to dismiss.
No, we've already made the decision. It's going.
So.
Is it a motion to dismiss or is it a motion to take no action?
Take no action, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a motion to take no action, Brian.
Yeah, so I move that we take no action.
I'll second that. Then just further discussion, because this one's been back and forth, so I just want to hear from everyone.
There's a huge amount of frustration in the committee, or in the community, of being upset about what happened and wanting us to do more and not being able to have a back and forth discussion with us about it. And I think that discussion needs to happen at town meeting. And I do lean towards, I think that this is not necessarily the right solution, but I want people to have a forum where they can discuss it openly and the pros and cons. And maybe through that, we're going to get to some other solution that we can do for next year. But, so I'm not going to vote yes to no action, so I guess it.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yep. So I'm on no action, but I largely share Amy's views here in that I do want this to go. I do think it needs discussion. I share Joe's perspective that I don't think the policy is fleshed out well enough yet for us to potentially implement it realistically. I really want to hear the conversation at town meeting. I need to get a sense of the community's expectation and frankly anger versus the justifiable concern from the business community. I don't know how to balance that, and I share your thought, Amy. The only way to balance it is to have them tell us. In general, I find myself aligned with the perspective that the business community is taking. This feels a little bit onerous, and we have already made significant improvements to the VIC process and our understanding of it, the language around it, and just the expectations therein. So I would be in support of no action as well, but I will follow the group.
Brian?
Yeah, no, I'm good to vote.
Okay, so we will just do roll call.
Was there a second?
He seconded.
I seconded it.
Okay, so the motion is for no action, so I'm going to vote no on no action.
Matt Kisner, yes, no action.
Brian?
Brian Herr, yes.
And Joe Clark, no, just to continue the conversation at town. I think
Us recommending.
We have a tie, right?
So hold on. So through the chair, us saying no action versus recommending approval in no way, shape, or form changes whether or not this goes to town meeting or impacts the fact that it's going to be presented. We already made a vote earlier today in which we agreed to approve the warrant as submitted. This is in theory an article on the warrant, which means it has to be discussed. So you voting no here is just creating a 2-2 in which we don't have an aligned recommendation. It in no way changes whether this is going to town meeting or will be presented to the community for review.
Is that accurate? Because I've confused myself.
Because if it's not, I don't understand correctly either.
I'm asking because I'm very confused right now. And it's okay to admit that.
The issue is that the select board needs to make a motion. And so is your motion going to be to adopt the bylaw or to take no action on the bylaw change?
Yep.
So right now, you have no motion. You have a motion, you have a vote to take no.
Well, Shaidu we'd have our extra person, we'll be here at the next.
I mean, we could write this as the select board will make a motion at town meeting and leave it open-ended, but, the conversation keeps circling, so we'll know what's most productive for the board.
I think we owe it to the community to take a position and make it clear where we are to help frame the discussion.
You could wait for a full board and do it the night of town meeting, before town meeting.
Sorry, the morning of.
All right, I think
That's the habit of.
that's risky.
Don't wait for the night.
That's right.
I think, all right, I think I got myself confused during that. I'm going to amend my vote to yes.
Yes on no action.
Yes on no action.
Okay.
To make it clear and simple.
Okay.
Apologies for the confusion.
No, this was brutal.
It's very confusing, yes.
Okay. All right, so I think that covers all the annual town meeting.
I was about to say the same thing.
Minor adjustment.
No.
Just from a technicality. The board voted to approval to rescind authorized but unissued debt, Article 4. That is now a no action item, so.
Oh, which one? Article 4?
Yeah, so that has since become no action.
Okay, so I would recommend that Board recommend no action on Article 4.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion around it?
Nope, seems like cleanup on our part.
Okay, Amy?
Amy Ridovich, yes?
Matt Kisner, yes?
Brian?
Brian Herr, yes.
And Joe Clark, yes.
Thanks, Lance.
Okay. So everything we needed ahead of town meeting? Okay.
Nicely done, gang.
All right, so,
No, not quite.
No.
All right.
The board members need to make motions and presentations. So is there a handout with yellow?
Motions and presentations?
for anything board-sponsored?
Right, board-sponsored. And also, there's 2 articles that are proposed by department heads who are non-residents. So if a board would make a motion on their behalf, it would be helpful.
Okay.
So I can just run through them?
Yes,
And then,
please.
We can actually circulate maybe a sign-up thing online or whatever works, because not everyone is here.
How many are there that we have to present?
Not too many, well.
There's 5 of us. We can
Everything that you're sponsoring. And then,
looks like about 11.
on behalf of department heads, it's the fire alarm bylaw for the fire chief and the police department revolving fund for the town accountant. That's just a motion, and then the department head would take over for a presentation.
Gotcha.
I like Elaine's suggestion of divvying him up in the background.
I was just going to say, do you need a motion for us to do that?
Nope, that's fine.
Okay, then I think,
And-
unless anyone disagrees, Brian, Amy?
No, and maybe the chair could assign us each 3 presentations, or
Yeah, I was going to make a similar suggestion. There's 11. We each do 2, and then somebody gets the odd one.
Okay.
And we'll assist with writing anything that you need, and preparing slides.
Do you have a standard template, or does the moderator have one that they'd like us to be using?
That's a great goal.
But
Okay.
simple, black and white, best for
I get-
visibility.
As far as slides, I know you offered town hall support in that. The moderator's looking for them by the end of the week, is that correct?
No.
Okay.
I don't think very many of these lend themselves to that many slides. Maybe
Yeah.
just some maps.
Okay.
yeah, any of
Yep.
the land.
Okay.
So through the chair, if you could perhaps, when you send this out to us, I would not be upset if a PowerPoint template made its way in there. I would be very favorably viewed. Please.
And with that, there will be a consent agenda, but it's not determined yet?
We have a tentative list.
Okay.
You can, Matt, are you talking about making your own slides? Like just giving a template so you can make it? Or like, do you want us to take a crack at it and then?
It's,
You want them to take a crack at it?
of course I do. I don't know how to do work.
Just being clear.
Okay, so we were discussing who's going to present, not who's going to make. My apologies.
Yeah, no, just for that, but, yeah, and then, again, email will circulate with, a matrix for responsibilities. So, yep.
I'll judge them.
All right, I think you guys have everything you need there. Did you want to run through the recommended consent agenda?
Yeah, we can, I can summarize some of the discussion from the consent.
Yeah, just summarize. I don't think it needs a ton of discussion. I think there was nothing strange that jumped out, but just so the board's aware of what was discussed.
Yeah, 1 second.
I have a numbered list. It's helpful.
Sure, if you can run through it that way.
There's the article numbers.
Go through it that way. So on the consent agenda, we have Article 2, FY 2026 supplemental appropriations. We have Article 4, which is the rescind authorized but unissued debt, no action. Am I looking at the wrong slides? Because that's can't be right. You have 6 here, can't be 6.
Mr. Chair,
Can't be
while
6.
Lance is looking at that, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Let me just double
We're
check.
talking about who's going to present the various articles and motions for the board. Generally, that's been done by the chair in the past. I know sometimes some of the boards have shared that. But most of the stuff we're talking about, there's nothing to present. It's just a motion and they take the vote. Like, I don't want
Yeah.
to make this into a 10 minutes per article thing.
No, correct. But I do think, like last year, if you remember, we convened, for a few minutes before town meeting that evening, and, you just made it up. Everyone had the option of, introducing the motion. It was more, there wasn't really a presentation. So I think, like you said, in the spirit of making sure everyone has a chance to, do that, I'm fine either way. Like, if no one wants to do that, I have no problem doing them, but I also am glad to share the fun with everyone.
Yeah, I think it's.
I think it's one thing to present the motion. It's another thing to present a slide about a motion that no one cares about, right?
Oh.
Let's not overstay our welcome at the mic.
I agree. No slides unless they're needed, or just for backup if someone asks.
Yeah, Brian, I think that was more specifically to board-sponsored articles.
Well,
okay.
One of ours is there's some land ones, so people will want to see the map on the slide, I think.
Yeah.
And the e-bike one, maybe coordinate with others on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so the consent agenda, as it stands, unless the moderator chooses to amend, is Article 20, Article 2, the supplemental appropriations, Article 4, rescind authorized but unissued debt, Article 5, set salary of elected officials, Article 7, FY27 revolving fund spending limits, Article 8, PEG access and cable-related funding, Article 9, transfer of OPEB to the trust fund, Article 10, transfer to the General Stabilization Fund. Article 11, transfer to capital expense, which is no action. Article 17, potentially, if it's no action, but that is yet to be determined. That's the Costa Brothers litigation. Article 19, the Community Preservation Funds. Article 26, the amend bylaw to establish revolving fund for municipal aggregation fund. Article 27, amend bylaw to establish revolving fund for municipal electric vehicle charging. And Article 39, appoint trustees of the school fund.
I'm strongly opposed to the inclusion of 26 and 27. You're going to get feedback about those minimally from me, and I expect you'll hear from others.
Any resident is allowed to pull any item from the consent agenda.
I know, but I would advise not including it because I strongly suspect that you're going to cause churn on it. That is not one that is going to evoke zero commentary. I think things that are on the consent agenda through the chair should be things that we believe have zero likelihood of generating engagement other than yes.
And it is the moderator's decision, correct?
What were those three topics, please?
So I think
what were those?
the two Matt is referring to is the established revolving fund for municipal aggregation fund and the established revolving fund for municipal electric vehicle charging.
Yep.
So we can convey that to the moderator who will be setting the consent.
Yeah, I mean, you watch me do it here tonight. You can safely assume I'm going to do it in front of more people. I think it looks bad for us if anything is requested to be pulled out of the agenda. It slows time down. Go as you see fit, but I'm being transparent. I will not let those go.
So
It's the moderator's decision,
I know.
not ours.
I'm go uncommented.
All right, so either way, thank you. You've gotten some feedback that will be passed along. So I think it just helps, though, to give almost a third of the articles, potentially are in there, a little bit less, with some potential changes. Because Lance, I think you said you were shooting for 3 hours on.
Yeah, I think we get done in 3 hours.
You heard Westboro went 12 hours, right?
Yeah, we're not Westboro, we're better. We're better.
Actually, did we need to talk about, while we're together on this, we had the idea of, I think there was some middle school events that afternoon that would, make us potentially do a motion from the board on ending at a certain time.
Yep, so.
You want to discuss that tonight?
Sure. There's so the room is only available until 4 o'clock. There's a pre-existing commitment on behalf of the school for that space. We're hopeful that.
What?
All business can be accomplished within 7 hours.
What?
So we would already end at 3 so people could be cleaned up? We can end at 4. There's time.
The 4 anticipates setup time. Okay.
To the chair, how have we booked a room that was not available for this meeting?
We're not really sure, how this happened.
Guys, we look like clowns.
So there was a pre-scheduled event at the middle school.
I'm sure there is a justification. Here's how this looks in community. You literally can't schedule the one meeting a year you are in charge of without creating a conflict, and you'd like me to trust you with $130 million. We got to be better than this.
So.
I don't think any of the town sports canceled either, so it's a tough weekend, just like it can be a tough evening, too.
It's embarrassing.
So we can obviously make that now. We can wait till the night of. I thought if we made a motion on that now, since it's a legitimate thing, it's not a theoretical one, then it would just save us some time the night of town meeting. You guys agree with that?
We're starting at 9 a.m., correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
I would hope we're done
And we're
before
going-
4.
Yep.
And we have the room till 4?
Yes.
We got to be able to get it done.
Yeah, and I'd rather use,
That's 2 nights at least of a normal,
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Yeah, so again, like, as a reminder, like, this motion would be needed when we showed up. So the idea of discussing it and doing the motion tonight would theoretically save us time the morning of May 2nd.
We actually don't have to make the motion
No.
the day of, but it's,
yeah.
I think it would be good to give people a goal of we got to finish by 4.
You're right, sorry. We don't need to. I think it's been a best practice of the town at town meeting to do this when we have hard stops. Whether it's, on a normal night and we say, hey, coming out the gates at 11 o'clock's the end, it's that same practice. We know we have a hard stop for a reason. So, yeah, I'll look for a motion. If we don't want to make that motion, that's fine as well.
Through the chair, while we're still in discussion, I would rather use the threat of the meeting running into a second day to encourage good behavior.
That's fine, too. So I'm not really hearing an appetite for a motion tonight, so I think we'll just hold off.
Okay. And do we have, if it did have to go past 4 p.m., what would be the next date available?
We would have to discuss at town meeting.
We'll discuss at town meeting.
So I think-
I really hope, like Brian said, I think we can get it done before 4, but
Last I heard from Evan Bishop is Monday, potentially.
like a Monday evening instead.
Well, Monday, the following Monday could be
Like 2
available.
days from Saturday?
Correct.
Or a week from, okay.
So that can still be determined, but
Okay, I think we should be prepared with an answer in case.
yes,
But I really think we can get it done before 4.
3 hours.
Well, let's hope.
I'm going to keep putting it out there.
All right. So I think anything else in regards to town meeting that we should cover?
Is there anything else on the list?
Oh, we have 2 more motions on the agenda, not related to town meeting.
Yeah, she's going to do town
We're going to the
manager.
town manager report, yeah. I just wanted to make sure. It was kind of,
Okay. So just an update regarding the bollards at 96 Main Street and the Main Street Corridor Project. Just lost my town manager report here. In a meeting on October 21st, 2025, and my memo says 2026, but that would be the future. The board reviewed a draft license agreement with the owner of 96 Main Street for the installation and maintenance of bollards at 96 Main Street for safety reasons. The board voted to authorize the town manager to sign the agreement. Since then, the design and location has been finalized, and the agreement was signed last week. And those bollards will be located where we see the cones now across from the Pleasant Street intersection. So those will be going in. Second, there are some upcoming vacancies or existing vacancies. Lost the report again. First, the IT department. So the IT department has had a vacancy since February 4th following a staff departure. During that time, the director worked with town departments and looked at other needs and identified an opportunity to realign the responsibilities in the department. And so the position has been updated and retitled as a senior support and applications technician. Previously, this position did a lot of work with our GIS system that would now be outsourced to our current vendor, which we already have available to us. So this role will serve as the primary resource for enterprise application support and as a technical specialist, bridging end-user support with application administration and supporting systems such as Munis, Laserfiche, OpenGov, and Granicus. This position is funded in both the 26 and 27 operating budgets. So they're looking for the ability to post that position.
Okay, and so then we'll be outsourcing support for the GIS system, the salary of the position, but it still fits within the budget. It sounds like it's probably a little bit of.
Because we already have the vendor who supports the map. It's just that they'll be doing more of the mapping for us that previously this person did a little bit of.
Okay.
I move to authorize the posting of the senior support and applications technician for the IT department.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call. Amy?
Amy Rodebush, yes.
Matt Kisner, yes.
Brian?
Brian Herr, yes.
And Joe Clark, yes.
And then from the fire chief, in looking ahead, there will be upcoming retirements in the department of 4 firefighters. So he's looking to be proactive in starting the hiring process, advertising an open position to create a candidate list. So they do their hiring a little bit differently through candidate lists and a different process. And actually, the fire chief has the appointment authority as well as a strong chief. So he'll be ready to go once a retirement is official with a list of people ready to fill those vacancies.
Okay. Through the chair, thank you, Elaine. That was going to be my question was, is there any potential world in which we essentially have somebody waiting to retire and we have a new person on the books? And it sounds like no.
The ability is to be ready to go.
Okay. I move to authorize the posting of firefighter positions in anticipation of upcoming retirements.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Amy?
Amy Rodebush, yes.
Matt Kisner, yes.
Brian?
Brian Herr, yes.
Joe Clark, yes.
And lastly, at the last meeting, the board voted to recommend the acceptance of Whisper Way as a public way. As part of that process, whether the way is accepted or not, they need to convey an easement to the town to access the drainage system if they need to, the detention basins if they need to. So we've worked with town council on the language of the easement. It's been signed by a developer, and the board will then sign to accept the easement to convey those easements to the town.
I move to accept the grant of easement for Whisper Way.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any final thoughts? Amy?
No.
Sorry. We'll just go.
Or just the vote. Amy Rodebush, yes.
Matt Kisner, yes.
Brian?
Brian Herr, yes.
Joe Clark, yes.
That's it.
All right. Thank you, Elaine. Liaison reports and board invites. You know, it's been a busy couple of weeks for some of these things. Anyone have anything new?
Through the chair, very quickly, I had the opportunity to have a discussion with the Youth and Family Services Department last week. What an incredibly impressive group of people that is. They are like 0.01% of our budget, and they are just doing good work all over the place. Had the opportunity to learn how much bigger Youth and Family Services remit actually is. You think of it one way, and you're not thinking about mental health. You aren't thinking about potentially financial insecurity needs in the community. That was actually my biggest takeaway, was unfortunately learning almost 50% of our population is at risk of financial insecurity. That was not something that I really understood, and it was pretty staggering to see it on a chart. Same to hear almost 20% of our population doesn't speak English as a primary language. There's an awful lot of data living in that department that I think would be relevant to a lot of discussions that we have here, and I'd really like to find a better way to try and tie some of the interesting sampling of information they have about the community to the decisions we're making. They have quite a bit more insight into the services people are using and seeking than I think we understood, or at least I understood. And thank you to Dawn and the team for taking the time. You were an incredibly impressive group of women. Thank you.
Amy?
I remember, it seems like there have been so many events. I want to acknowledge that several of us, including Matt and I, attended the Rang Holy event at Weston Nurseries. They had really nice weather, and that was fun to see everybody. And then
thanks, Satch.
The marathon wreath ceremony is coming up on Thursday evening. I don't know if anyone else is going in Boston. I'm afraid nobody from Hopkins will be there. But anyway, I always enjoy it, so I'm going to go. And then I guess we should add to our future the 4th of July parade now that we have approved that. Yes. Seems like we would just need to attend, if not March.
Same with the Pride Parade?
Yes, I think that was already on our list.
Okay.
I can't find it. We'll invite us.
I'll be there.
Brian?
Elaine did a nice job touching on the bollards that are going to be going in at Main Street Service. The landscaping company for the corridor is going to be coming back to straighten out the trees that took a beating after being planted over the winter. So they'll all get cleaned up and realigned properly. And also want to thank the DPW, Carrie Reed, and Elaine and everyone for helping get cleaned up for the marathon. They're going to be putting some mulch down in the new gardens across from the common as well. The stuff on the common they've already done, just to make it look that much better for the eyes of the world when they come here next week. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, I think just that with the marathon, you know, just days away, you know, I attended the quilt show kickoff, Elaine, joined me. That was, my first quilt show, and certainly, it was very exciting to see all the work that goes into that, and it was kind of like an unofficial start to the marathon activities, right? I think, and as another reminder, this coming weekend, there's lots of stuff, the 100-yard dash for the kids. A lot will be going on downtown as we get ready for Monday. So a ton of people, I'd be remiss if I, started listing names, because there's so many people that volunteer time for that leading up to the big day. So a lot of exciting stuff happening this weekend.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
do we have the credentials lined up for the marathon? Has anyone heard anything about that?
Well, Dottie sent out the sheet to fill out, right?
Yep. I think those will be available at the end of this week, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and then for the board, I decided to stay home because I'm on the wrong side of town for this. I'll see you next year.
And on the subject of the marathon, I went to the informational meeting hosted by the BAA for the residents of Maple Street, Church Street, and Price Street, where everything is changing. And they had a nice custom map for that area, so that was good. I was actually the only one who attended, but I got to see the interior renovations that they had done. I knew about the exterior because we had to approve those, but the interior renovations are really nice too. And then I admired the winged feet exhibit on the common, which is really nice, and it's just everything's looking lovely.
I know we touched on a few future board agenda items. We added in the Independence Day Parade. Anyone have anything else?
Yeah, through the chair, I want to suggest removal of 3. Item E, individual select board goals for FY26. I'm the one who asked for this one to be added, and it's the end of the FY. I will definitely come back and summarize how I think mine went, but that agenda item is no longer relevant. Item I, Keefe Tech apportionment. We had the conversation with John tonight. And I'd like to suggest removal of item K. I believe we've had follow-up conversations here about the state of those refunds, the changes in software, this board verifying that there was public discussion here, that this board did respond, et cetera. So just looking to do a little cleanup, and then I'd be remiss if I didn't throw my weight around here a little bit. I've been asking for almost a month now to have the DPW and the Water and Sewer Advisory here. I'm asking loudly. We had another resident here tonight explaining that they cannot drink the water in the town. Enough is enough. I'm going to be incredibly upset if I do not see that group here next time. That is May 5th. I expect a presentation, and I expect a discussion about how we are to respond to this crisis in water quality and to the overall drought in the community. There has been an abject absence of leadership. It's unacceptable.
We have been working to schedule that.
Thank you.
Paul has said he is available on the 5th. He's working with the other board members. They're going to discuss it on April 22nd.
Thank you.
We could probably cross off the Mass 250 celebration, because we've talked about that now at a couple meetings, and I think we're aware of the ones coming up.
What about the center school RFP process update?
Do we consider that to be essentially what we had tonight?
I think that might count for tonight.
I'm comfortable.
Over, and now they have
Yep.
the trending lease.
Okay.
From there. So that's D, E, I, and K, I believe we agreed to strike.
G2.
G.
And G, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Roll call.
Amy Roberts, yes.
Matt Kisner, yes?
Brian?
Brian Hurd, yes.
Joe Clark, yes. Thank you, everyone.